Meeting is being video recorded. First order of business, roll call. Chairman Birch is absent today. Todd Dwyer, I'm here. Bob Pease is absent. Katie Childs.
Present.
Carl Luck.
Present.
Jack Rabbit.
Present.
Ken Jones.
Here.
Any announcements from the commission?
Ken?
Go ahead. No.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. First of all, is it on? Are we on? Yeah. Okay, the first part is that I'm asking if we'll have a quorum that'll, next meeting. I will have to recuse myself. Hickory Hills is created a submission to present the NOI to Matt, as well as we've positioned, we presented it to the DEP. After consultation, outside consultation, and meeting with the DEP, I have, it's been stated that I should recuse myself, of course. I was part of this team that developed it and did a lot of the calculations and formulations of a 197-page document. And basically, I am allowed to sit at the back of the room. I'm not allowed to directly address this board, but I am allowed to talk to the members specific to the questions if a board member, if you're
the only one who can answer the question,
I can
you
do
may.
it, but I can't answer you directly. I can answer it only through a member. Now, where the document is, where this is so large, and you could literally spend months going through this, if I could ask that the members read it in advance, and Matt, I don't know if this is legit, but if you have any questions, that they would forward them to Matt and send it over to us so we can have the answers for you, and we can rattle through this a lot faster. Otherwise, it's going to be painful.
And you're on the first meeting in April?
That's correct, April 4th.
Okay.
Yes. And the second part is good news. I think that with regard to the walking through the Little Town Forest, I think we're past 175 views, and everybody I'm talking to was really happy with what we're able to do there. So that's my...
Any other announcements from the commission? Any announcements from the public? There are no announcements from the public. I will call to order our first meeting. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the town of Lunenburg, Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a request for determination by Marley and Ryan Dixon for the construction of a sandy beach at 307 Townsend Harbor Road. Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I will need to recuse myself for two separate reasons. First of all, I wasn't here for the first session where they occurred, as well as I am possibly in a butter within a few feet, and I'd rather just stay clear of the whole thing.
I hear.
I will leave.
I don't see them, and I know they know about it because I emailed them a couple of days ago and told them that there could be potential delay for the meeting, that if there was, there would be an announcement, and then this afternoon, I sent out a confirmatory email to them telling them the meeting was on for tonight.
Okay. Seeing they're not here, I think...
we might want to wait before we do any action, just in case they're late.
I agree. I think we continue, or...
Just pass over it for now.
Pass over the meeting for now, and hold it till the end. If they show up, great. If not, we can deal with it at the end. All right, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, and the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public hearing on a request for determination of applicability by North County Land Trust for work at 548 Northfield Road will be held. Work entails installation of a small bridge to span a stream to make open space trails accessible within the front and the buffer zone thereof. North County Land Trust, please come forward. And just to note for the record, Bob Pease has joined us. Hi, Bob. Why don't you tell us what you have going on?
Okay.
Can you just send that mic down there, Carl?
So, okay. I thought you would, you had the applications in front of you, but we have a parcel of property on Northfield Road.
Yep.
The Peabody Conservation Area, and it's 21 acres, and we are hoping to, well, we are planning on building a trail system on that conservation area, which will be open to the public for passive recreation. The Malpas Brook runs right across it, traverses the entire property. So at the very back of it, on the near the northern boundary. And we would like to put a bridge across the Malpas Brook so that we can extend the trail system to the very rear of the property and add in an additional loop. The Malpas Brook is one of the most beautiful features of the property, and we would love for people to be able to enjoy both sides.
Sure.
Both sides of it. So we'd like to put a 20-foot bridge across that would be 5 foot wide with a handrail. I included a plan, a sort of diagrammatic plan of the proposed bridge.
Yep.
Now, if I may interject here really quick, my understanding is that you and your organization and Mr. Massey have worked out an easement
Yes, we
in
have.
that area as well.
Yep, we have. I've been speaking with Darren Massey, and he has agreed to give us a trail easement across his property so that we can park, people who are using our area can park in the Lane Conservation Area parking lot, go across his land, because we only have 20 feet of frontage on Northfield Road, and it's not a good place to park. So he's allowed us an easement across the property.
Yep.
So, it's a revocable easement, it's not a permanent one necessarily. And so that's our request.
Now, I did receive a phone call comment from DEP on this. The only thing they would ask us to consider is not having like railroad ties or any material like that being used.
Okay, it appears from your sketch of the bridge that you're going to use telephone poles?
Yes, new
poles.
New poles.
So
not
nothing
used
soaked in
poles.
creosote.
Yeah, new poles.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask, are there any restrictions with regard to this property usage, meaning specifically snowmobiles?
Yeah, non-motorized is,
No
no
motorized vehicles at all.
non-motorized use.
Okay. Yeah. Just so,
But everything else is allowed.
bicycles, of course?
Bicycles,
Yeah.
horses, hikers, skiing.
Any other questions from the members?
I don't have any questions.
Good project. This is great.
And I see on your sketch, you're going to add a third supporting pole, the only two are shown on the sketch.
Yes, we're probably planning on doing that. I'm having an
Okay.
engineer sort of review our plans just for, to be sure of the structural integrity.
Okay, and it looks like you have supports on either side for the poles, foundation supports. Are they going to be small concrete pads, or?
Yep, we're going to pour a concrete pad, the width of the bridge, a foot wide and
Okay,
deep. It'll just basically be laid on the top of the, we'll rake away the loose debris and then just pour the concrete pad, just a firm place for the bridge to rest.
yes, Bob?
How are you going to get the materials back there?
Well, if we can access it with a small, like a gator type vehicle, then we will do that. There is a good trail, going across Mr. Massey's property. We may be able to use a gator, otherwise volunteers will heft everything in. We've done that before.
Thank you.
If there are no questions from the commission, are there any questions from the public? Seeing no questions from the public, I'll entertain a motion for a request or a -3 determination for the project.
So moved?
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All set?
Yeah, I do have one other thing that if it's okay for me to bring up at this time regarding the same property. As I mentioned, we have been speaking with Mr. Massey about crossing his land with a trail easement, and he's been very gracious to allow us to do that. He is very interested in permanent conservation of his land too. And so to make a connection between the Peabody Conservation Area and the Lane Conservation Area, at least a portion of it. And North County Land Trust would be very interested in working with him to do that. And I wanted to ask the Conservation Commission if there was interest on behalf of the Conservation Commission or the town in maybe applying for a grant to do that, to apply for funding. If that is something that is of interest, working.
I was recently appointed to the Open Space Committee.
Right.
We've not met. We would need to update our open space plan, which I believe expired in 2014, in order to be able to apply for grants.
Okay.
But we, at least the members of the Conservation Commission who are on the Open Space Committee are interested in getting that updated, so.
Okay, okay,
But
so,
the answer is yes, but there are some, hurdles to be
right.
jumped.
So the town is not in a position this year, or until your open space plan is updated, you're not in a
Exactly.
position to apply for state grants?
Exactly.
Okay, okay. All right.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg's Wetland Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public hearing on a request for determination of applicability by Scott Benjamin for work at 40 Fire Road 12 will be held. Work entails installation of 3 docks within the buffer zone. Mr. Benjamin, please come forward. Do you have the file on this, man?
I've got a diagram of the placement of the docks that you need.
Great.
Secondary, I assume that. So well within the buffer. And all the docks are right about 24 feet.
Thank you.
24 feet, 3 inches or so.
Mr. Benjamin, how many docks were originally on the property?
1?
There was 1 dock? Okay. And I know we had you under, here, initially under enforcement, and now you've come forward with your plans for your docks. I guess my question is, when was the construction of the docks? When did it occur? Was it?
So one happened in the winter of 2016. February-ish. And the other happened in October, November of 2016.
So the docks have been in place for a little over
Yeah.
a full year plus
Yeah.
plus a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the construction of the docks?
They're all 2x6 construction. The docks themselves are 310 with an edge overhang on each side of it, 5/4 by 6. 2x6 construction, just like you do a dock or a deck. A ledger board that's concrete anchored into the concrete wall. Stairs going down. There's 4x4 posts going up that are affixed on the dock supporting by 2x6 and on the bottom by 2x4s. So it's over-designed, so I never have to touch it, to be honest.
All right. Any questions from the commission?
Was the concrete wall there prior to? Was your concrete wall there prior
Two.
to you putting the docks in?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have to create any kind of walkway to address these docks?
No, they just go through mulch, to be honest.
Mulch? Was it always mulch?
I don't know what happened with, I moved in 2015, so I don't know what it's been before that, but it's been, dirt or mulch.
There
so.
was a prior order of conditions from the prior owner for the construction of the wall and the mulch that's in that area.
Is there any evidence that in the areas of 3 docks that other docks had been in those locations?
Yeah.
Just, you went through the construction. Are they sitting on the, they're sitting on the
They
ground?
sit on the lake bed, yeah, 2x4s going around the 4x4 posts.
Thank you.
They go up the grade.
Okay. My opinion, Mr. Benjamin, is that if you had filed with the commission prior to constructing the docks that, well, my opinion is I would not have been in favor of constructing 3 additional docks when you already have 1 dock that gives you access to the lake. I don't know how the other members feel. I don't know if people want to discuss if they're in favor of 3 docks or not. I personally am not. I think it's excessive for the waterfront and is, well, it's excessive. But again, that's my opinion. I don't speak for the other members.
Mr. Chairman, I know in the past we've allowed 2 docks to occur, as it appears that there's a little bit of a break in it. But I'm with you. We're going to put docks that are really, this is public property, and are we going to allow everybody to essentially put their own little picnic table out on our parks, as many as they want, So I'm with you in that, 3 is a lot. And
Don't remember, there's 1 existing dock as well, so
Yeah.
now it's 4 docks.
oh, it's a total of 4 docks?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I take that back. I think we were saturating the area then.
Which of these 4 docks is the existing dock?
The one in the-
Oh, I see.
It
It's
says
clearly
existing.
labeled, sorry. And what's the rationale for this many docks?
So I have 3 boat lifts, and so 2 of the docks are mainly to get access to the 3 boat lifts. 1 boat lift's in the center, then 1 on the other side of the 2 docks. And then I have a pontoon boat as well, so that goes at 1 dock, and then if I take a boat off, and
So you own 4 different motorboats?
yes.
Okay.
And the boat lifts, they're permanent in the lake as well?
No, they have
So
feet and they move and yeah.
So you pull the boat lifts out every
Yeah.
winter?
Yeah.
Okay.
I tilt them up actually, but yeah.
So if you couldn't keep all the docks, would the boat lift still be there?
Well, I need to keep my boats out of the water to protect the boats, right? So,
So that sounds like a yes.
sure.
I'm not sure.
I guess for me, if you're going to have boat lifts in addition to the docks, and I think they need to be shown on the plan where they're proposed. However, I still think adding 3 docks and 3 boat lifts to a property that already has 1 existing dock is excessive in my opinion, and I'm not in favor of it.
Mr. Chairman, I think the number of docks is worthy of discussion in our regulation review, but we don't have anything right now that limits the number of docks. So I would have a hard time making some quasi-arbitrary decision of how many docks is appropriate without.
Well,
in the
we
regulation,
have in the
but-
past on different properties on Lake Shirley limited the number of docks by applicants. And that was based on discussion within the group, because we take it by case-by-case basis. I'd be open to a second dock possibly. I mean, he's got, a lot of waterfront
Yeah.
frontage there.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I'm in favor of keeping 4 docks on that property.
And within 60 feet, that's dense.
No, I have 150 feet, or 145.
27,
It's between docks.
Those are just on the ends, Jack.
so you got 140?
I think it's 144, 145, somewhere in there, so.
If you had 2 docks, could you put 2 boat lifts on each dock, 1 on either side?
I mean, then you take a boat off and then you're always strapped, right? Because I have 4 boats, so, then I I always have to keep a boat on a boat lift, and I can't put a boom on to teach kids how to ski or, this or that. So there are limitations and things with that. So I would have to keep the boat lift separate and, potentially put a, I don't even know, do something, right? I haven't thought that far ahead, to be perfectly honest.
And these, just to be clear, I think they are, but just to be clear, these are all your personal boats. That's not,
Correct. I do not have a marina.
you don't have a marina.
They're all my personal boats.
Chairman, is there a possibility we could defer on this decision and then quickly go into some sort of discussion to come up with what is reasonable and get a public hearing going with regard to what we should be doing?
If we're gonna do that, my take on that, and forgive me for interjecting, would be to go with what Carl was suggesting. We hold another workshop, go over our regulatory review, and then talk about it as a group there, and conduct it as a meeting/hearing.
Are you really proposing writing rules that don't exist now and using those rules to apply to this guy?
I am suggesting that before we try to make this decision, we have an in-depth discussion as to what we'd like to do. And then we can make that, and then we can go back and write the rules anytime we want, but we just haven't discussed. What are we going to allow? They could plaster that entire shoreline with as many docks as they want. And you're essentially...
No, they couldn't.
Why couldn't it?
Because we could vote it
Well, we could vote them
down.
down, but right now, we're being presented with a situation which is essentially the same.
And all we could have to do is say no.
Right.
We could say no now.
We could say no now.
I don't think we need to have any other discussion other than tonight.
I mean, when we talked about regulation review, I remember the chair was of the strong opinion there should be one dock.
Right.
And we had a long discussion that evening, probably lasted 20 minutes. We already discussed this issue once. And we didn't reach any definitive conclusions, and we didn't write any regulations that night, and we discussed it for about 20 minutes. I personally am in favor of allowing to add one dock. I'm kind of blown away that he's got 4 boat lifts.
3 boat lifts.
3 boat lifts.
4 docks. Yeah.
4 docks. Well, all right, so my position would be he could add one dock. That would be my position.
You can put a boat on each side, right? You take care of your 4 boats.
Yeah.
For now.
It's 3 boats. He's got 3 boat lifts.
Yeah, but you could accommodate a visitor at that point. I would support that, Bob.
Why don't we take a poll of who's in favor of the request for determination at this point? I am not in favor.
Who's in favor? You raise your hand.
Who's in favor?
Hold on, it's an RDA?
It's an RDA.
I mean, I think that, so...
They're already constructed.
So we'd have to vote a positive determination on the RDA. Would he have to file a notice of intent at that point? Or would we just, how would that?
You'd have to file a notice of intent, yes.
Yep.
So I would, I don't think we need to have any other discussion other than, I mean, I would make a motion that we find a positive determination if there's an impact, and we go from there. So that would be my motion.
Bob?
I have a question.
Yes.
Why would I have to file an NOI? I'm not following that. We've allowed other docks based on RDAs.
Matt, can you speak to that?
Because typically the dock
Yeah.
has no impact.
Well, and Mr. Benjamin, for your information, typically when we review docks and allow docks, it's a temporary dock. It's not a pressure-treated structure.
That's what I was going to say. They've been normally removable docks.
Right, so while it may not be supported on a pile foundation or something of that nature, just by the nature of the construction, your docks are not easily removable.
Mr. Chairman, I we argumentative, but, we've never required removing of the docks, so I think...
Carl,
I mean, they are removable.
I did bring this up when I was here last, right? And that it wasn't whether or not I do remove them, but the fact that they are removable was sufficient. And that was one of your statements, right?
We've also never had a case, at least in my time on the commission, where someone has built 3 docks and without asking.
Yeah, but I think that's different than we've got several things here, we're going in parallel, we keep going around. One of them is, when we approve a dock that is removable, are we requiring that it be removed? We've never done that, but that's a separate subject from how many docks he's requesting, so we should address that separately, I think. Because that has a pretty big implication for many people, not just this applicant. I think you have to start going around
Well, I don't think so.
Shirley and Hickory Hills.
Because many of the docks have been grandfathered in.
I think that, if you look at the amount of shoreline that I have versus the placement of docks, it certainly does not crowd the shoreline, and it's a lot less crowded than many other places on the lake. So there could easily be 4 lots on that property or 5 lots on that property, just the amount of frontage that I have, and there could be 5 docks. So, I don't think it at all clutters the shoreline.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to come counter that, in that I think by putting those extra docks in there, you're limiting the public's ability to access that shoreline, not necessarily step on your property, but to fish within that close vicinity. You're limiting that. And I don't, where it's public property, I'm not in favor of allowing people to limit other people, especially fishermen, the ability to not, you would be pretty upset if you had somebody playing around with your boat because he's fishing under your boat.
I do. In fact,
Yeah, you would. And so what would happen
well, no,
is you're limiting.
I'm saying I oftentimes there's fishing line. So regardless of whether or not I like it, they're not limited by that.
Well, they are in terms of being able to cruise the whole shoreline. Now all of a sudden you're pushing them out, you're creating disturbance. I think you're by adding all these docks, you're limiting the ability of the people to use that property,
Spacing the shoreline.
and freely use that property.
Problem is they put it more into perspective.
What's the distance between your docks on your sketch here, Mr. Benjamin?
These 2 are the closest right here. This is about 12 feet. These are about 25 feet.
And what's the distance between these 2?
30, 35 feet. So I'm guessing here I have the,
Okay.
I have 27 to 33 feet on either, side of the.
Okay. That's pretty close together. So he's about 35 in this space, about 25 in this space, and about 12 between these 2 structures.
Yeah.
Yes, Bob?
Are you going to finish polling the commission?
Katie?
What's that? Oh.
What's your opinion?
Well, I kind of have a question. I was trying to interject. I don't have any boats, so I'm not familiar. I was hoping the board could speak to this. Really, like for a dock, there's 2 sides. Could you have 2 boats per dock, or is that not feasible?
Sure. You do.
It's feasible? Okay. Just something that I was wondering, because I'm also of the opinion that, I think we should go at a workshop a later date, like Matt was suggesting, figure out how many docks we should allow, but I do think, in my opinion, that 3 extra docks would be a lot. If you guys have done 2 docks in the past, I haven't been here, but I think that sounds reasonable for 4 boats, especially if there's 3 boat lifts in the water.
So there's 3 boat lifts in the water, right? So if I have a pontoon boat, I have 4 boats.
Right.
So if I take a boat off a boat lift, and I want to put a boom on to help someone, where you can't have a boom on because it's a long pull outside the side of a boat, you can't get it on or off a boat lift, right? So then I'm limited from that point of view, and that's really, what I like to do is I like to help kids learn to ski and all that nature. So 2 docks would really be limiting from that point of view.
I don't think you have the votes to get more than 2 docks.
And honestly, I don't think it's a hardship.
I don't either. I think, I think that the number of docks is excessive, Mr. Benjamin. I appreciate that it's an inconvenience for you. However, I think it's excessive number of, an excessive incursion into the lake, and excessively clutters the shoreline. I would be in favor of allowing you to keep 2 of the 4 docks. Frankly, I don't care which 2 docks that you keep, but I'd be open to that. I don't know if the other members would be open to that. I'm getting some nods. Look.
I think considering the fact that there was not a prior request or approval by this board, we're being generous.
So if you're open to 2 docks, we can amend your order and note that 2 of the docks will be removed?
Is 3 acceptable?
Not to me.
I'd be in favor of 2.
I would support 3, but that isn't going to help you much.
All right. And if you're not open, we can just vote on your application as is?
I don't know what that means.
So what that will mean is if your application's denied, you'd have to remove all 3.
Okay. So, I mean,
So that's your choice.
yeah.
We had a motion on the floor. Are you keeping with your motion, or are you going to withdraw it?
I mean, I still, I'll withdraw it at this point, I guess, pending, I mean,
I'm not sure why, if we give a positive determination, and then why any files an NOI. I'm not sure what that's,
yeah, no,
we're still going to be
Yeah,
at
that's
the end of the day in the same
our
split.
options right now, though, are to file, I mean, we can vote a negative determination.
Yep.
Or we can vote a positive determination, right? So, I mean, those are our options.
But you can condition it based on the number of docks.
Yep.
Right.
So you could say, we'll give you a negative determination for 2 docks.
And
that would
I'd
have
be
to be
amenable to
spelled out
that,
on the
that's
form-
fine.
on the form.
I guess it's,
Okay. If you're open to that, then I think we can vote to approve that.
Sure. I mean, what else can I do?
I would withdraw my motion for positive determination then.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission? Any comments from the public? With that, I'll accept a motion for a negative determination on the condition that 2 of the docks are approved on Mr. Benjamin's property. 2 out of the 4 existing docks may remain.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
The only, you didn't ask for discussion. I just, get for clarification, we should get defined, it doesn't have to be right now, but we should get defined which 2 he wants to leave, so we have a document of which 2 docks are placed.
I would suggest that we wouldn't sign it in our following meeting unless that's been submitted.
I agree. Will you accept that amendment to your motion?
Accepted.
So,
All right.
seconder accepts it.
All right, we have a
So what's the
motion, a
amendment?
second, and amendment. We're going to amend that, Mr. Benjamin, before we sign. At the next meeting, we'll amend the file to note which 2 docks he's going to keep.
And just for clarity, when will the other 2 need to be removed by?
Is the water already back up?
Never as cold as all heck.
Well, the man is up.
You don't want to try and do
If the
that.
water's already back up, you know, frankly, I'm at the point where wait till the water goes down. When the water's down, you can have access to your docks and you can enter in the dry.
Yeah.
I think we wait.
Till you draw down.
Yep.
Okay.
It wasn't fair.
Okay, so it'll be, next season, you'll have to take 2 of them out.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Wait, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
So I do or do not come back for the next meeting?
You have to, sometime between the next meeting, you just have to meet with Matt and let him know which 2 docks you're going to keep on your sketch.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rednerman.
Mr. Dixon is here.
Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a request for determination by Marley and Ryan Dixon for the construction of a sandy beach at 307 Townsend Harbor Road. Mr. Dixon, please come forward.
Chairman, excuse myself?
I'm noting that Commissioner Rabbit recused and left the table.
Yep. You have the file on that one, Matt? Have all the commissioners been able to go by the property and see the beach? All right. And we've all been out to the project. Why don't you describe what you have going on your property, Mr. Dixon?
We ended up putting sand down because the ground on our property is like very treacherous, with roots from the huge oak tree that's on our property. And then we paid our fine for that, and then my wife like revised it and wrote up a thing to try and so we could keep the sand down there, wall. But you gotta like bear with me because I didn't even look at this until just now.
Okay.
She got stuck at work, so. So like, you guys got that proposal from her, correct? With the
Yeah, it's here.
picture and everything? Okay. So it's just, from what she explained to me, it's, we want to do 6 by 6. Kind of what it was, but just to keep the sand from going into the lake.
Yep.
Pretty much it.
That's the ticket. Magistrate's receipt. I believe this is the file is in here. It's the first one. 'Cause there were two RDAs. This is it. This is the second one.
Is this on the cloud, Matt?
Is it on the cloud as well?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Throw up the cloud.
Bear with us as we pull it up on the...
Where is it? There we go. It's the termination from the cloud. Here,
Thank you.
I can do the minutes after on this hearing. Mouse is here too.
So you're going to propose, was it, what size barrier?
From what she put on here, it's an eco-friendly wall made out of 6 by 6s, but they're 16 feet long. So where, I don't know if you guys said you went down there, the small brown dock that we have down there that's like right on the water line.
Yep.
It would be from the back side of that, just along our property line, along the water, just to keep the sand back. And it looks like she has it, so there's like 2 or 3 of them stacked just to hold the sand back, because it's been coming down the hill since we put it on there, so.
Okay. What about just removing the sand?
That was the whole thing, why we did this proposal, because it's like, kind of like not really an option, because we need something down there, because we have little kids down there all the time, and elderly people. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys saw it before we put the sand down there, but the roots are ridiculous.
Mr. Chairman, just comment on that. I mean, we have seen it several times, and the roots are ridiculous. I mean, that whole area really is not all that compatible with a beach or entrance into the lake to begin with. So certainly you need to do something if you're going to use that for people to get into safely, but I don't think that's the solution of and it's exactly why I think we were pretty clear that there was not supposed to be sand put to begin with when you came in initially.
Yeah, and we had already discussed all that. The last time I was told by Birch to put through a proposal, and that's what my wife did. That's why I did.
Yeah, after you put the sand. I'm saying, with the original proposal that you came in for the deck, there was no sand proposed.
Yeah, I know, and that's
So that,
what my wife
and
recommended.
if there were, we would have said no, because it's not a good condition for it. It's a very steep bank. It's just going to keep going into the lake. My personal feeling is they need to come up with a different strategy for how to safely get into the lake, maybe some form of steps or something. I don't think there's no end of sand that you're going to be putting on there that ain't going to end up in the lake unless you have a
Yeah, I
4-foot
don't
wall.
think she like proposed to put any more sand down there, just a barrier to hold what's still.
But you're going to construct a
there.
barrier or a wall at the bottom to retain that sand, correct?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
From what she put, like I said, I literally like just looked at this today, so.
My thought is I don't want to see another structure created at the water line. So I don't like that solution. I would entertain if there were boulders or something like that, a natural barrier that, critters could get around at the bottom, kind of a form of erosion protection at the bottom using large stone or something like that. And if that kept the sand in there, I think I would be amenable to that. I don't know how the other members feel. But as proposed with creating a barrier at the bottom to retain the sand, I'm not in favor of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of a new wall-type structure.
I'd be open to some proposal like that, but I'd have to see it drawn because that bank is so steep. I don't see really how you can do that without really creating a pretty tall wall. And then you won't have good access because you'll have this pile of stones that people got to get
Where we
over.
put our deck, there's access down to the water, because then our dock's going off of that brown dock that's down there, so there's access to the lake, just not to like, for the kids to be like, in our like sandbar, if you would call it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't think, with the proposal I think we're saying here, that they wouldn't have that either, because there'd be a big pile of rocks along the edge of the lake. It's not going to create a sandy beach swimming area for kids.
Yeah.
It's just that piece of property doesn't lend itself to that. But you're welcome to propose anything if you can think of something along the lines of what was suggested. I just physically, knowing that, how steep that is, I just can't envision a barrier
I agree.
that's going to give you what you need for kids to be able
So
to
there's
go
something
play.
else that you guys, like, because I don't know what else to do, like, besides, like, removing the sand, and that's, my wife's, like, completely and totally against that, which she should have proposed to ask for the sand to begin with, I understand that, but, now moving forward, like,
To me, I like Carl's proposal the best of take the sand out and put a nice sturdy pair of steps to go down there so people can have access safely with a rail. I'd be open to something like that, more so than keeping the sand there. As you had it, even with your little dock that's down at the water, I found that hazardous and almost slipped on it myself just because it's at an angle, it's plastic, it's rather slippery. There was no handrails or anything like that, so in my view, I don't know that that's a good solution as it sits.
Was that structure on the plan?
it's not even
you
really
approved?
structured, like, you can literally pick that up and move it right out of the way. It's just sitting on, like, cement blocks.
Yeah, I understand, but was that structure shown on the plan we approved?
I don't, I'm gonna look at it right here. Oh, we had in the original approved one. Was the deck with bench seating, here's a plan for the deck. The water, and it showed steps coming off there, so there was no,
But nothing coming down to the lake?
correct.
So it sounds like you need a revised proposal.
Yep.
What you have is not good, and it's not complete, showing everything that's there. I'm not saying what's there wouldn't be acceptable.
Yeah.
It's just not been requested or approved. And it may need some rework because it didn't really look that safe.
So right now, it looks like your options are, one,
Doing a proposal.
do a new proposal to rework it. I think you can see how the members feel that we're not really in favor of building some sort of retaining structures to keep the sand. We'd rather you remove the sand and create something that allows safe traffic down so you can use the water. Because once you get past those roots, it's nice and sandy right there in the water.
Yeah.
So I think you still have a very usable shoreline there. Any other comments from the members?
No, I mean, I'd like to see a rework of what you got and what might be another alternative.
Okay.
The only other loose end is looking again at what's there versus what was approved. You know, what was approved was a freestanding deck sitting on the surface.
The prior approval was sketched.
And what's there is a deck with piers that have been dug into the ground. I think that needs to be rectified.
You're right, and actually it says in the original structure was a cement block foundation, which it's not. You don't have blocks. You have 4x4s or 6x6s that have been dug into the earth, which I don't believe this commission would have approved if that had been proposed initially. So let's take the first order of business first. In terms of this proposal for our retention structure at the bottom, would you be open to a continuance then to come up with a new plan to address that?
Yeah, obviously be more prepared because like my wife, like I said,
Sure.
she's stuck at work and she's the one that did the proposal herself, so.
Okay. And then as far as the existing structure that is there, what I don't see in the file, Carl, is any note that says the cement block foundation, the cement block should be resting on there, it cannot be buried to a degree. So just by going what's in the file, I don't know that I personally wouldn't be in favor of forcing the owner to alter the foundation of that deck.
Yeah, I'd have to review the minutes, and in that case, it was just shy of when we started recording meetings. So we don't have an audio on it.
And this is in the document that we approved?
That's the document.
This is,
If you remember, I believe there was we had a limited number of members at that meeting.
And there was a very long debate on whether or not the vote was actually valid.
Yeah, that was for the shed, because got approved for a shed when we got approved for the deck at the same time.
okay. So the
We haven't put-
They
we haven't
added
put the
that
shed
in, and that was like over 2 or 3 meetings, this particular thing went.
I just didn't remember the shed isn't there.
No, the shed's not there yet.
Is that going to go on top of it? I'm just totally confused now. Is that shed on top of the
No,
deck?
I don't even know if we're gonna do the shed anymore, but the shed was like where those steps come up from the road, like on that part of the property. That's a whole nother thing that I don't even know if we're gonna do it anymore.
Mr. Chairman, I think that as part of this resubmission or this revision, that the whole status of the shed should be clarified in location and every other thing. Because at the present time, I have a hard time seeing where a shed would go there. I mean, the deck is huge and there's not a lot of
It's gonna have to be redrawn.
land there. I agree with you in your statement that I don't see the point in making them dig out the 6x6s that are in the ground.
Yep.
And I saw some, if you were to do a poll, I think you'd find that there were other members who felt the same way.
I agree.
Steve nods. Okay. And I think, well, if you're open to a continuance to the next meeting, the April 4th meeting, or would you need a couple more weeks than that?
That should be fine. Like I
Okay.
said, just get me better prepared in a new submission.
All right, and then I think in that interim, it would be smart if we did a careful file review and a review of the minutes to make sure that we're on the same page and what's been constructed is what was agreed upon.
I'll dig out those minutes and throw them into the file and make, if everybody wants, I'll throw them on the clouds for everybody.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
great, okay. Then if there's no comments from the public, I will accept a motion to continue this meeting until April 4th.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. We'll see you on the 4th.
That's at the Ritter Building, by the way. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
And then, before we go into the woodlands, there's a couple of quick issues to take care of. One was the enforcement on 91 Reservoir, and the other one was signing the extension permit for Mr. Anderson, who's here.
Sure. 91 Reservoir Road. What was the issue on 91 Reservoir, Matt?
That, to refresh the commission's memory, that was, I got a call from one of the commissioners here to go investigate, and that was in an area where we have the 9 lots.
Yes.
And there was some tree cutting going on in the preservation envelope. So I issued a verbal stop work and issued a letter and asked the property owner to come here. And Mrs. Allen is here.
Hi. Good evening, how are you?
Good, thank you. So yeah, Michelle Allen, 91 Reservoir Road. I was here about a year ago to put a swimming pool in my backyard, if you guys remember. So prior to us buying this lot, someone completely stripped and made the area a desolate wasteland. And when I got the original permit, I thought I had an understanding that I could clean anything dead out behind that, behind the silt fence that we have there. And that's simply what we did, was drag all of the dead wood out and ship it up. We have no intention to do anything further with what's back there, no intention to clear anything further, and no intention to cut anything live. We like it all. So I feel like it was a little bit of a misunderstanding. I didn't understand that I had to come back here to ask for you guys to be able to do that. So I think that's where we stand at this point. All we did was remove anything that was dead out of there and chip it up so that things could grow again, because it really was not a pretty sight from our backyard.
Sure.
And we are preparing to put the fence up around the pool, and once the fence is up, we can bring it back there again. So I think, like I said, that's where I think we stand.
Comments from the commission? Bob?
I didn't think that removing deadwood was a regulated activity.
In this case, I need to clarify, because there was a machine there and there was cutting of trees going on. The trees were dead, but they were cutting it.
Right.
It wasn't like they went in by hand and we're pulling them out.
So, yes, I was gonna say, my husband his background is tree. He has a lot of equipment. I think it's just homeowner error. We didn't understand we couldn't drag that stuff out, not by hand.
Right.
We have no intention to do anything further with it behind the...
Thank you for the clarification. I now understand why they're here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think just driving, I was the one that called Matt, driving by and seeing equipment beyond that line, you know, like you said, it's a sensitive area. It is that back area is sort of like a wasteland. I agree.
I would say it's boys and their toys. My husband has a lot of equipment. He got a little ambitious to make it all done
So, I mean,
really quick.
Just so you know that, like, we're kind of keeping an eye on that area.
Yeah, no, I
and,
understand. I
you know,
mean,
with everything that's gone on.
someone ruined that land before we purchased it,
Right.
and...
So, and I certainly don't fault you for wanting to clean that up, and I think that's probably completely appropriate. So I think you might be right that it was a misunderstanding that, you know, what happened.
Would there be an option for simply replanting that area?
We were told we couldn't do anything like that, so,
You can't replant?
I mean, I would...
There's nothing to replant. I stopped it very early.
Yeah.
Yeah, replanting with other trees, replacing the trees.
There was really only a couple of trees that
Just
were
a
cut when
couple?
I got there, and like I said, I stopped it early.
No, I think he means the whole
Just in
area.
general.
The area is pretty thickly wooded as it is, the preserved
Plant
area.
that or put some trees up.
we would love to, but we were told we couldn't put anything back there. We couldn't touch it, except for removing anything that was dead. Right now, most of it, a lot of the trees are actually starting to fall down because of the wind and the snow, and they're toppling over, and there are all these old pine trees that just have big, heavy tops. And then there's lots of brush that's just sort of there. I'm not against planting trees. I think trees would be great back there, more so than what it is, but that's not what I was told we could do, so.
You know, they could come up with a plan on taking out any of the material that's fallen over and replanting some live trees.
Yeah.
I think it might be smart for that entire development if we address that, so we don't keep coming back at this piecemeal and piecemeal, because it is an eyesore. You drive by there, and they really did a terrible job of the way they left that property after they did the cutting. They cut out the lots, but then you have, you know, acres of stumps. That is really an eyesore. And I hope that maybe we can come up with some sort of guidance that we'd be amenable to as a commission to allow everyone there to
I think they would appreciate that, because I think it's like I said, it is an eyesore, and I think they'd be very I'd be very well open to removing stumps and putting nice looking trees would be fine.
It's a very good point.
I'm not talking about removing the stumps would be staying.
Well, some of these trees are just like.
Oh, I don't mind cutting the dead ones down, but
Yeah.
actually you don't want to disturb the soil to any degree, so you'd leave the stump or take it to the
But
ground.
what I'm saying is there's so much brush there right now. I mean, it really,
You'd wanna
you
take
drive
it out.
by there, it's kind of an eyesore. I mean,
It's an eyesore and potentially a fire hazard.
and a hazard just if people are trying to just walk.
Yeah, to enjoy the walk.
Bob?
So then I would encourage them to remove the dead wood the way they have been. And I don't know why we would give them any orders. I think we could be permissive about replanting trees. I don't know why we would give them any orders to replant trees, because I don't know.
I don't know that we had to give them orders, but maybe we could collectively pull the files on those and contact the property owners and give some collective guidance of what we're open to, so we're not back here again saying, well, you were in there cutting and there's miscommunication. So we clearly say that if you're removing dead wood and things of that nature, then the commission's fine with that. Because there's still, in my view, there's still a lot of debris that hasn't been cleared.
And I think I would think, based on the comments I heard here tonight, that we should encourage that.
Precisely. Without having to have someone come in under enforcement, you know, repeatedly, whether one of our neighbors or does the same thing, they could be right here in front of us. And I'm just thinking maybe we need to be a little more proactive on this one, because after, it's been a couple of years now and it really is an eyesore.
Mr. Chairman, to a degree, the debris actually does provide a habitat. I think we need to consider drawing a line there and saying, you know, you go up to what was approved, and after that, it probably stays there. I know that in terms of trail clearing and things like that, what we attempt to do is we attempt to create these little igloos, right? These piles of brush and such that provide the habitat to the animals in the area. So you don't want them to go down and take out all the stuff on the ground down to the water line, you know? You'd say, okay, on your property, and...
But I think that's kind of what Todd's point is that we pull the files, we examine each of the rear yards, we examine the strip, and then we look at that habitat and those habitat values.
Right.
And then work out a plan with each of the homeowners so that they can do particular activities. Everything's spelled out and there's no misunderstandings.
Right.
For example, I would cite the issue we're still working at a few houses down, where the gentleman came in and wants to put the shed.
Right.
You know, and that's still kind of like on a continuance until Rosemary is able to go out when the weather clears out and survey that riverfront area.
Right.
You know? I mean, you know, there's a lot of considerations here, and pulling it file by file would be not a bad idea.
I do think that there isn't much that can grow back there anymore because of the level of just debris that's down. And like I said, because of that, the trees are getting weak and just falling right over. So I don't think, this is my opinion, that it's not a bad idea to put stuff back there that starts to keep the ground a little bit more solid.
Something to help retain moisture.
Mr. Chairman, I definitely think your idea is a good one to get ahead of this. I just want to make sure that we're careful not sending mixed messages. We're not saying that we are allowing people to go back there and even do good things right now, right? Because this is an area that they have to
Right
come
now,
to
it's
us.
not supposed to be disturbed
It's not
at
supposed
all.
to be disturbed at all. So even a good thing of planting a tree can't be done without coming in. Just, not just for you, but
But, you know,
whoever at home
we'd
maybe
appreciate
on
guidance, I
that
think, would
strip,
be good.
maybe listen to this, because this kind of said different things.
Certainly nothing punitive at this point for anybody that we've
Right.
identified. Right.
You're saying it's not disturbed at all, so that means they can't take that wood out of there?
That's, the way it's left right now, that's not supposed to be disturbed at all. Everything's supposed to just be
So
left.
removing dead wood is a regulated activity.
Within that buffer zone.
Anything outside of the lots is not supposed to be disturbed. That's my understanding. I don't know if I have
No,
a
mean,
misunderstanding, Matt.
We've habitually allowed for people to go in by hand and just pull stuff out. That's
Okay.
not a disturbance. That's just pulling dead wood out.
Okay.
It's when you start all, but that's vegetation that's already on the ground.
It's already on the ground, right. Yeah, it's not
you
a
know,
tree that's,
It's not something that's standing.
right. Dead or
But I mean,
alive.
Again, I agree with the idea, and I agree with Carl's take on it, that we should pull these files, and stay ahead of it, examine everything individually, and come up with some type of a standard that's on paper, that's clear, that benefits both us as far as having something on paper, and benefits the homeowners and saying, you know what, yeah, you want to go in and plant and do certain things, here's what we all agree on.
I agree, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
So what you started.
With
That's a
that, to me, this appears to be a overzealous homeowner. I don't personally feel that we need to take this enforcement any further.
I agree.
So, with that, I don't know that we need to vote on it, but I thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much. I
And
appreciate it.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And what was the other order of business, Matt? We wanted to do an extension?
That was on the, this is the extension permit, it's for the Tri-Town Landing.
Yes.
I can go over everything real quick again, but we did a sidewalk a couple weeks ago. Everything seemed pretty in line with everything that we were talking about. I know Carl and Todd were out there, and I think we were all on the same page that whatever we're doing is in line with the original permit, and we're actually going to try to reduce as much as possible.
It's actually a reduction.
Yeah, I think it's.
For the audience's benefit, can you just do a quick summary of the change to what your original plan was, or from your original plan to the updated plan?
So the original permit for the Tri-Town Landing development was issued back in 2009, and an extension permit was granted in 2012, July of 2012. It's for the development of essentially a apartment complex off of Young's Road. Currently, there are 4 buildings constructed at this time. Originally, there was a permitted 6. As part of this redesign, they're combining 2 of the buildings together and reducing the amount of impervious and parking areas because of the altered unit counts.
Yep.
We are still going for the planning board to get their approval because it is under 40R and it does require their blessing, if you will. As part of that, there will be some bank parking. See, I'm used to you guys, bank plantings. But bank parking spaces along that last strip. What we're proposing now is in line with what's there right now with the unit counts. The applicant does multiple projects of this type throughout the region, and they have a pretty good idea of what kind of parking count they need. So
Okay.
what we're showing now is what they anticipate, but the planning board prefers to see bank.
And you're reducing the number of units from 6 to 5 and combining the last 2 units into 1 unit, and that's going to be a over 55 unit?
Yes.
Kind of creating a community garden.
Anchoring the community garden in one of the areas that the building was going to be in.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the file, and I think it's an improvement, and I have no questions or problems.
I'd agree with Bob.
Jack?
I'm agreeable.
Carl?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good improvement.
Good? All right.
This is a 3-year extension permit. They actually filed a few months early, so it would be effective till
2021?
July of 2021.
All right. Any comments from the public? If there are no comments from the public, I'll accept a motion to approve the extension of the Tri-Town Landing permit.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you sign this tonight?
Yeah, you can. Hey, Chris, if you want to wait a minute, I can make a copy of it, the machine, and give you the original now.
Pass that back down. Thank you.
Give me a pen.
Did you notice that he motioned and Todd just looked right at you? Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg's Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a request for determination by Woodlands Village Trust for the replacement of a deck, addition of new concrete supports as needed, expansion of existing footprint by 2 feet, installation of concrete or stone or paver walkway for access to the rear patio under the existing deck, expansion of under-deck patio by 2 feet, and reestablish stone wall from wood line to existing stone wall, contour or lawn area to finish landscape of lawn and plantings, along with the removal of 1 tree. The work will take place at 7 Trillium Court, 100 Royal Fern, and 112 Royal Fern.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a trustee at the Woodlands, and I'll be recusing myself and seated in the audience. If I make any comments during this hearing or the next, it'll be as an individual representing just myself.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Both the NOI and the RDA are here.
Hi, how are you? Good. Please, name and address.
Are we doing this in block form?
Well, my name's Mark Bursch, 20 Buttonwood Place. I'm here to speak on behalf of Mr. Arnold at 7 Trillium Court.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you for meeting with me today. The only thing that Mr. Pease put this together, I put together a determination, but due to the fact that the Woodlands owns the property, it needed to be submitted by the property. We felt it was easier to submit it with other things that they needed to submit.
Yep.
I did have installation of surface drainage and pipes for a gutter system to reduce surface water compared to my original installation. So I brought a plan tonight to also review for that. There should have been a plan that I drew up defining the area at the back of the house. So to better understand it, I did also draw an overall plan of what I'm preparing for drainage. What happens is on the uphill side, there's a significant amount of water that holds, and it's causing damage to his foundation, and we also feel it's saturating an area underneath his garage floor and deteriorating that from below.
Okay.
So our proposal is to catch the surface water and take the gutter water and bring it around to the perimeter drain and/or go to the street drains if allowed by the Woodlands property owner. So the plan that I have here shows an option A and an option B for that drainage. Basically, the blue line is option B, and it comes out at the perimeter drain at a low end of the property. The perimeter drain from the foundation already comes out here. So I would direct it all here.
I can't see it, no.
If we could, the option A would split it off and take some of that to the street drainage.
Mark, can you hand that down here when you...
Yeah. So, this is the wetland area back here.
Yeah.
What we want to do is capture all of the gutters.
This is 7 Trillium Court?
Yes,
Okay.
right on the corner.
Yep.
So capture this, he wants to put a wall in here, so we need drainage behind the wall. And we're gonna dump it out here where the existing drainage.
The perimeter drain comes out.
And then it just naturally flows into the area.
Sure.
Up in here, the water sits. So we're thinking of a surface drain up here.
It's supposed to be.
And if allowed, go this way, if not, we would go out there.
That's 11.
And of course, we have to modify the spillway to reduce the velocity of the water as it comes out.
This is 130 feet long.
It must be in this room because it's 7
There
here.
we go, thank you.
The plan that I had,
They all look alike.
Now that's 7 trillion, correct? Because it's labeled 11.
yes, it's 7.
Oh, that
Okay.
is 7, okay.
Yep.
That's why I'm so confused here.
Yeah, so basically, this is the back edge of the property here. There's 85 feet to the actual flow of the wetland to the corner of the house.
And this is the new wall that you're proposing?
No, this is the back wall.
Oh, okay, so that doesn't even show that on that plan? Okay.
I'm concerned more about the wetland area.
Sure, yeah.
So, and all of our work, we wanted to reconstruct a stone wall that came across there, put a paver walkway for access around to the back.
Yeah.
He wants to extend his deck here, and in that, some of the supports and sonotubes might need to be replaced.
That's outside the 50, right?
Yeah. And all of the work that we're proposing is inside an area that is already contoured and landscaped with a lawn area.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
On your sketch for 7 trillion, it shows a line that shows 50 feet to flow. However, it doesn't show the distance to the wetland. So I don't know that from this sketch, we can accurately determine
Good point.
where the 30 and the 50 are.
I think that this,
There's been a couple members that have done a site visit, and Matt's been out to review the site. Sure.
Yeah, we were out there, but I guess the point was that that's the river, that's where the stream is, but where's the wetland?
Is the flow.
Is the flow? So there's no wetland
Was the
outside of it?
determination of
No,
that the wetland
there was a flagged area that showed the limit of high water mark, which is the flow. There's no BVW on that section because the BVW is upstream.
Okay.
And it flows down.
So on this side, the
So it
flow is
turns
the
into a
wetland.
channel at this.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, that's why I
Got it.
those
That's the
measurements.
other funky part of the drawing here, if you like.
So I guess, is it 50 feet everywhere, or is it?
No. So when you look into the backyard, this is the best way to consider you're
Yep.
looking up. Basically, the lawn area follows this contour this way.
Right.
The wall.
And this is where basically the wooded area would begin. This is where you stop mowing with your lawnmower.
Right.
And this is where the wooded area would begin.
Okay.
So, in this instance here, this is 30 feet to the edge of the wood line, and what would be your mow line, and then it's 56 feet to the edge of the house.
Okay.
So I don't have an exact what this is to the.
And this stone wall's proposed?
This stone wall is existing.
Existing,
And this-
okay.
And over here, it's existing. I
Okay.
think over time, due to construction or access,
Mm-hmm.
this was removed, where we want to put this back in. So basically replace what.
I mean, there were remnants of
Yeah, some of it looked like
Okay.
buried, yeah, right.
Okay.
There was a bump in the ground.
This is an old stone wall.
Yep.
And we're not looking to make anything, and change anything, we're just looking to.
Restore what was there.
Restore it to its
Understood.
original condition.
Okay.
Like you say, I was on the site and got a good tour by the owner, and it looked pretty straightforward. And recovering that wall is a great
I don't know if
idea.
I showed you guys, this was the drainage plan.
Yep.
So, if allowed, we would pipe some right into the street drain. If not, we would come around and come out where the perimeter drain is to alleviate, this is an area where water's sitting, and he's having problems with his foundation on this side of the house.
Mark, what's there at the outflow of that perimeter drain? What's there now? Is there some riprap or anything? or Nothing?
Nothing. I would assume that, if we're gonna increase the flow, that I'm gonna do something to decrease the velocity of the
Put
water
a
coming out of
riprap
it.
pad or something?
Yeah, I pulled out a quick tangent, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Just kind of do something to slow the water down. Because now you're increasing multiple, you're gonna increase the flow.
Are all the drains that, in the Woodlands development contained within the development?
I have no idea on that, I'd have to defer.
Okay.
This is, we put this in as an option, we would have to get permission to do that.
Okay.
The drainage that you're talking about putting in, perforated PVC pipe, or what type of drainage?
Yeah, pretty much, it would be something that, some would be perforated, the gutter system would be mostly solid.
Okay.
Because there's no reason to,
As far as like depth and what are you gonna use for machinery to install it? Is it handwork, or is it, you're gonna get a mini excavator in there?
probably be a mini excavator or a trencher to do the most of it. Whatever we would need to do the work for the structures for the deck.
Sure.
Probably the same machinery to dig through there. Something smaller, not anything too invasive.
Okay. And it looks like in the application, 100 Royal Fern Drive was to add a paver patio?
That is beyond my scope.
Okay.
Unless they hire me to do it.
Come on down.
So, we have multiple projects that are,
Yep.
Yeah, it's all under one application.
okay.
Okay. Hold on, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Mark?
For 7 Trillium, I don't
For
have
7
any other
Trillium?
questions, no.
No? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 100 Royal Fern Drive.
Good evening.
Good evening. Name and address, ma'am.
Sandra Hobby, 104 Royal Fern Drive.
Why don't you tell us, are you going to address both the remaining properties?
Sure. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Can you come up here and talk to the microphone? We're televised, so I just want people at home to hear you.
I just wanted to say, the notice in the paper only mentioned the Trillium Court address, not the Royal Fern address.
That would be because you may have read the earlier edition, there was a second ad that had to be put out because the first one was an error, and that one was actually in the Sentinel and Enterprise, whereas the first one was in the Lunenburg Ledger.
Okay, that's the one I saw in the Lunenburg Ledger. Okay, I'm just surprised you're talking about it, since
It
I
was
only saw
properly
that.
advertised.
Well, I was going to say, before did you guys notice that there was extra work on the PDF I had sent you guys?
Yes, I
Okay.
put the address here.
Okay.
Do you want to start with 100?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's see here. So, and that's the locus, that's the area of it. You're all looking at that. Okay, great. So in February of 2017, the Woodlands trustees requested of the residents of the community just some feedback on the accessibility to the lake. And we learned that there were several people that actually had issues with walking long distances. And as you know, the peninsula down to the waterfront for us is a good walk. So we did do several things to mitigate that. One of the things was the step, and I think some of you know this too, the first step going down was actually quite high, so we lowered that, so now they're all equal, so that helped. We also placed a bench at the base of the peninsula so people could rest, give them somewhere to sit before they go down. The ramp going out to the docks was really rocky, whether you had, mobility issues or not, it was rocky. So we put some weights to counter that, and that actually has helped quite a bit. So we've done several things to try to help that out. And the final thing was to apply for the permeable paver ramp. And that's drawn out, as you can see. And again, the idea is to have it much more accessible for people with those mobility issues to be able to go access the ramp to head out. If they're permeable pavers, did you see that?
We're not looking at
Mr.
the
Chairman,
right-
are we, what are we talking about right now? Are we talking about 100 Royal Fern and 112 Royal Fern, or are we talking
100.
about 208 Northfield Road?
100's a patio.
Is that different than the access ramp that's proposed in the next hearing?
I'm very confused. The 100 looks
Yeah.
like a patio.
The-
100 Royal Fern is the paper patio.
I'm sorry. I skipped right, thank you. I skipped right over. All right, back to 100 then. It's pretty simple. It's just that putting in that permeable pavers, which we have throughout the woodlands, and we would be using the same type
Okay.
for that. Sorry about that.
Absolutely.
So we did do a site walk and that
Sorry.
looked pretty
Yes.
good. It's pretty flat, there's no excavation.
Mm-hmm.
And,
What's the distance from the lake?
quite a ways.
Quite a ways.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I don't even.
Right around the circle.
And out the bushes that were shown there, it was told that they will stay, so there won't be any removal
So
of any
everything's outside of
shrubbery.
50?
It's outside 50.
Okay.
and,
We actually do know
There's no
that,
major excavation.
It's 68 feet from the high water mark.
Great.
No
Yeah.
vegetation removal, so.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Any other questions on 100 Royal Fern?
I don't have any questions.
Questions from the public on 100 Royal Fern? Yes, sir. Name and address. Please come up so we can hear you. Everyone can hear your question. Thank you.
Jack Denny Brown, 15 Wintergreen Court. Yeah, we did look at the diagram for this. I think it's 10 Royal Fern, is it?
100 Royal Fern.
100, okay, whatever. The diagram of the patio was difficult to interpret. The measurements were odd. They seemed to be off. They weren't in scale. So we couldn't really make a determination as to what the patio would look like. If you look at the diagram, it appears, if I remember correctly, that the 12-foot portion was smaller than the 8-foot portion in the diagram.
Yeah, I see.
10 foot.
Yeah. The 10 foot is smaller than the 8. I see that. It's a little out of proportion, but it,
So I didn't quite get it.
It says plus or minus 8 feet. Looks like.
It
We didn't
does.
know what that meant. We also wondered if a measurement had been made in regarding the 50-foot zone from the lake.
They do state on the application that the outer edge of the patio would be 68 feet from the lake high water mark.
Okay, except it's not clear with the,
Plus or minus 8 feet.
right, it's not clear with the outer.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, a lot of times when you're doing paver work, the measurements are never exact because you'll end up with a walkway that if you spec it for 4 feet, it might be 4 feet 4 inches.
Due to the gaps
Due
between the pavers.
to the size and the nature of the pavers, because they're all different size and configuration. So that's the possibility on the plus or minus.
Okay.
The only thing,
yeah. I
well,
think
it says 8
Yeah.
feet plus or minus 8 feet, so then that would be,
Approximately 8 feet
Yeah.
is the intent.
Right. Right.
that would be my guess as the intent as I would design it.
And that's what, when I spoke to the gentleman who lives there, that 8 feet was the dimension.
Right.
I understand the plus or minus, usually the plus or minus goes on the other side of the 8, and it's not so confusing, but.
So that would be my interpretation.
And they do have a dimension that shows it extends essentially from the existing structure 22 feet towards the lake. So
Yeah, so.
I think there's enough dimensions on here where we understand what they're proposing.
Mr.
Proportions are
Just to
extreme.
help this move along and for the future, perhaps Sandra could just cross out the plus or minus 8 feet and just put 8 feet and initial it, and then we'll be all set.
Okay, great.
You know, keep a record.
Do you want me to put the plus or minus on the other side? Thank you.
Any other questions, sir? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the commission on 100 Royal Fern Drive? No. All right. Let's move on to...
The only thing I might suggest in terms of marking up prints is that there's some note, if it's not, it might be in the words, that the shrubs are not to be removed. The shrubs as shown will remain. Because that's what we were told when we visited.
They wouldn't want to remove it.
I
It's fine. mean,
understand.
So,
I can put it on the form.
yeah.
That's fine.
Yep. I don't think we have to amend the drawing. All right. 112 Royal Fern Drive. It appears you have a damaged tree leaning toward a house.
We do.
The checkmark tree.
There is a picture of the tree.
It's literally shaped just like a check mark.
Really?
Yeah. Just like that, like a reverse check mark.
Sorry.
There you go, Kate.
Oh, I'm looking.
Oh, you are, okay.
Yeah, I got it.
I say, I saw that tree
That part.
on the walk. I did see that tree, and I commend you for your rigor in being so precise with the regulations to even tell us about that tree in the middle of the woods of such a sad-looking tree.
So your intent's to remove the tree, but leave the stump flush at the ground surface?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission on 112 Royal Fern?
Done.
All right. With that,
We'll get to the thing I was talking about.
Yeah, we finally are.
yes, do we want to take the...
That's a separate file.
Yeah, that's a separate file. We're going to have to open that. So with that, I am open to a motion for a negative determination for this file for the work proposed at 7 Trillium Court, 100 Royal Fern, and
With the addition of the
112 Royal
shrubs to
Fern.
remain.
With the addition of the shrubs to remain adjacent to the patio at 100 Royal Fern.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other comments from the public? Do we have any further discussion?
No.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended in the Town of Lunenburg Wetland Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a notice of intent by Woodlands Village Trust for the construction of an access ramp at 208 Northfield Road. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Now, why don't we go over what's happening at 208 Northfield Road? Do we have the file on that one, Matt?
Does anyone?
Actually, it's in...
Do any of
it's
you
in
need
here.
a picture?
Could I?
Sure. You're welcome.
This is killing me, Smalls.
Notice of intent.
I just have to read.
I just think to make it a challenge.
That's right.
At a meeting.
That just kind of shows you what's the drawing.
All right, so why don't you give us a rundown of what your proposal is here now?
So, I gave it up. So, let's see here. This picture actually shows it. Sorry, let me just get up here. This picture, I think, shows it the easiest. And basically, we're trying to make it easier for people to access the water. So if you noticed, there's already kind of a worn path here because people have been making a shortcut out of it. So sometimes you instead of fighting it, as we looked at this thing, we said, what makes the most sense there? And we knew we had to do something to improve the accessibility. So the design actually naturally came out of what's happening with that land. And so the idea is just to very simply put in the permeable pavers to make sure we have some railings on either side to assist people that can hold on and walk down to that ramp that I was talking about that we had weighted to make more stable. So it's pretty simple design, and any direction or suggestions that you have that, we welcome.
What's your proposal for the handrails, and how are we going to see those? Is it just simply going to be timber handrails, or?
I thought we were going to just keep it consistent with what we've got
Okay.
out there already.
So the steps that are there now, they're wooden, and those are going to come out?
Those stay, this
Those
goes
are gonna stay.
adjacent to.
It goes
right, those are-
adjacent to
yeah.
that, okay.
That's where we lowered that top first step.
Right, I remember that top step, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
the
it's
stairs
right
that are
next
in
to
the
it.
picture are going to stay?
Yeah.
All right, so that's what this is?
So what they're doing is adding a new, essentially this is a new ramp.
So, Mr. Chairman, I also visited this site, and I love those pavers. You don't get any more porous than those.
I know,
Those are great. And it's a fairly gradual.
That's what you have at your house,
fairly
right?
Yes, it is. I love them. It's fairly gradual. It's narrower than I thought, but I guess it's so you can hold both sides, so
Right.
it looked like a great solution to me.
I agree. I think also you're providing handicap access as well as people take their carts down. You know, they take them right down on the dock now without it.
Maybe not, it's kind of narrow.
Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would be too
You
narrow
don't
for
drive
that.
a cart down.
No, not a golf cart. Little, your little wagon carts. So
Your wagon, you're
Oh,
right.
wagon one, yeah,
The booth
yeah.
wagons, right?
I'm
You
sure.
drag down- yeah.
Not the yacht club cars, not the yacht club cars.
Provisions.
Provisions, is that what they call them? Liquid.
Now, what it says here is the ramp's going to be approximately 2 feet plus wide and 12 feet long. Is that wide enough?
Yeah.
Well, the idea is just as described, that so people can actually use that to help themselves down.
Okay.
That's why I say it's not very wide. It's just-
Yeah, that's
it's a
what I'm
great
saying,
idea,
is
so you
it
can really-
trafficable?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, okay.
It's great from that.
Okay, as long as that's what you want.
It's not
And there's no, that
There's
tree
not a
won't-
lot of space there.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the tree's not going to be affected, right?
Exactly.
So,
They only have that.
That space there.
Any other questions for the commission? Any other questions from the public? Yes, sir, please come up and give your name and address.
Hi, Steve Douglas, 24 Wintergreen Court. I'm not sure if the Conservation Commission is concerned about things other than the safety of the land. I'm concerned about the steepness of the ramp, especially for those mobility challenged. These pavers will go right next to the stairs, so the slope is similar to what the stairs are right now. And I'm concerned about people, beer carts and gasoline cans falling into the lake because of the steepness there. There is more room on the other side of the stairway, and I just wanted to bring that up as a question as to whether that was any concern for the Conservation Commission. And the other concern with the pavers is I don't know how well small-wheeled carts or dollies will go over those pavers. It might be fine, but I was a little concerned when I saw that.
Thank you. Can you speak to that, ma'am, at all? The point one, that one of the residents indicates that there could be more space on the other side of the stairwell and to the proposed slope of the ramp.
Well, the first thing I can say is that we did, as I said before, we did reach out to the residents of the Woodlands and asked if anyone had mobility issues, we asked for input. So we did hear from people, and those people who responded, we then went back to and showed them what we were going to propose, and they felt that what we were doing would be a big help. As far as using the other side, I would personally be concerned that we'd be disturbing already a pretty sensitive area there. It's quite steep, and that's one of the reasons I said in the beginning that you can see people are already naturally going that way. So it just seemed to make the most sense. Is it perfect or ideal? No. I mean, obviously, you'd love a really gradual, anyway, there are other places we could do something, but it'd be disturbing a whole new area, and we don't want to do that. So So that's what I have to say about that. And as far as things rolling over the permeable pavers, it is a challenge with permeable pavers. I think we all recognize that. But it's kind of the best of what we can do in this area. That's what we felt, anyway.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a couple of comments, because I have a lot of experience with those pavers. The holes are, I don't know, maybe 4 inches or so. So if you had something with a wheel that would, have a problem with and I presume they'll be filled, what will you put in the holes?
That was one of my questions for you. What would you recommend on that? Because we want it to stay as pervious as possible.
What I have, which may not be the best thing for you, is like 3/4 rock, and it does get some weeds,
Right.
but it will naturally fill up with with dirt and grass or moss or whatever you get there. So they won't be holes. It'll be bumpy, but
Right.
I don't have any problems at all with any little carts or things that I drag around. The other thing, and I didn't do any measurements, but it did seem like a good solution, because it didn't look like it was going to be that steep the way you're doing it, and it's not parallel to the stairs. It's going
No,
off to the side.
Right.
So and you could do the math,
That-
and it's 12 feet long by however many steps that are. So
Yes.
it's not real steep. The other side is much steeper. You have to go a lot
it is.
longer to get a less slope.
You can see how broad it is.
Mr. Chairman, if I may? I'm sorry, were you done?
I think I was done.
You were done, okay. With regard to wheelchairs, I know my home, I've designed it for when I get older, and all my doors are wider, and I know a wheelchair is a good 2.5 feet. I don't know how, with a 2-foot, how safe that would be?
I think it's going to be too steep to get a wheelchair down. It's not designed
Yeah,
as a wheelchair.
It's
Too steep?
No.
You would never get a wheelchair down there. It's far too steep.
So this is just simply walk, keep off the dirt?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there any access? Is there any handicap access?
Not, I don't know of any. I can't actually think of any on the lake, I'm thinking.
A lot of us have beaches we can ride down and stuff, but yeah, I would think that we would want to entertain some sort of a handicap access.
That's not what they're proposing.
Oh, I know that, but
yeah.
I'm just saying for the future.
In the future, right?
I would definitely support making even a modification to the slope of that embankment, as long as we stay out of the water, to support a handicap ramp of some sort.
I'd support as little disturbance to
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
area as possible.
But there's a lot of, there's 48 homes up there, is there 45? 47 homes up there. A lot of folks, someday I might move over there, and I probably will be in a wheelchair or something, So I just think that we need to be thinking in those terms, and I have no problem, honestly, with the 2-foot path. But if you folks
Thank you, Jack.
don't, I would support. Okay, thank you.
Katie, any comments?
No, I think it looks fairly straightforward. I mean, the permeable pavers are awesome with the handrails, so yeah, it's just going, so you can just get on down there. And the concrete landing, that's right up to the water, correct, yeah. Okay, yeah. It's pretty good.
All right, any comments from the public? If there are no additional comments, I'll accept a motion for a negative determination for the work planned at...
I think the notice of intent.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will accept a motion for a notice of intent with our standard order of conditions for the work at 208 Northfield Road for construction of an access ramp.
I would make that motion.
You have a motion?
I think they did have straw wattles or something on the plan.
Yeah.
They had erosion control, so standard order would be fine.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're all set, man. Thank you. pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 as amended, in the Town of Lunenburg Wetlands Protection and Municipal Bylaws, a public meeting on a request for determination by Yannick Family Trust for replacement of a septic tank at 34 Hemlock Terrace.
Good evening.
Good evening.
By the way, before we start, I just want to let you know that this is actually a first in my entire 32 years of doing this, but while the hearings were going on, I received an email from a resident that wanted me to let you know that if you're changing the tank count to sell the house, they have a friend who's looking to buy on Hickory Hills.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's been in the family for, since 1952. So,
Okay, I promised I would pass the message along. I thought it was kind of cool. I've never had that happen before, so thank you for the first.
I would just note that it's urban legend that every house that's sold on Hickory Hills Lake in the last year or so has had a bidding war, so I'm not surprised that there was an offer came in the middle of the hearing.
so this is an original 500-gallon metal tank of 1950s origin. So the suggestion is, since the cover rotted away, we're going to replace it, we thought originally with another 500-gallon tank, but apparently the Board of Health requires a 1,500-gallon concrete tank, so that's what we're going to replace it with. The contractor indicates that he can do the work within a day.
Okay.
Thinks it's fairly simple, although expensive.
That was Danny, right?
Sealed unit?
Was it Danny or
John.
which Proctor?
It doesn't say.
The handsome one.
Did you need these? No.
So it's a very tight situation. The house obviously would never be permitted under today's regulations.
Sure.
Oh, so there is a leach field. It's not a sealed tank, it's a...
Is this the house with the pine tree going up through the middle of the day?
Absolutely.
Oh, right.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Now, will be no need for any kind of replacement or extension of the leach field at all?
No, it works perfect. Everything works perfectly well there.
Yeah.
Oh, you must take good care of it.
We do. Every year we pump it. So, and the people at Sheldon Pumping Service comes down and say, why are you pumping it? There's no stuff in the bottom. So, it's only the two of us now. Our kids grew up there, but everything works fine.
And it appears you have it about as far away from the wetland on either direction as you could get it.
Right. We do have the Board of Appeals permit, and the only constraint there was that it be 20 feet from the property line, meaning the...
And the Board of Health just issued a permit on that too.
Yep. Any questions from the commissioners?
No, pretty straightforward.
Any questions from the public? I'll accept the motion for negative determination.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That means you're good to go.
You're all
Thank
set.
you.
Yep.
Keep up the good work with the maintenance.
Mr. Chairman, I suggest we poll the audience and see why they're here and take care of their business.
We know I
He's here for the beach erosion issues, and Mr. Charpentier is... Come on up, sit.
All right.
I was talking to Matt. The reason being is that you're going to be shorter than him.
Okay. Good evening. So just my name and...
Yeah, name and address.
Matt Charpentier, formerly of Lunenburg, currently of 270 Franklin Road, Fitchburg. I'm here to offer up my assistance in mapping the town properties, the trails. I've talked with Bob a bit about this, and I understand he's out there doing some great work blazing and maintaining them. I'm a botanist and environmental scientist for work, and I have access to ArcGIS as well as handheld GPS units. I've talked to a number of individuals in town who see a need for maps. Most individuals aren't willing to go out there into, the Lane property in the town forest itself is 1 square mile of forest.
I've personally know 4 different sets of people from the Woodlands who have gone out onto the Lane property in the now large town forest, ended up over on Seaver Road, had to call for assistance, So there is definitely a need for maps.
Sure.
And I'm advocating that, Matt and I talked about this fairly extensive, that we take and create one map of the entire area, that we color code the trails somehow, by somehow customizing these things, putting either a painted circle or get them in different colors or something like that. And that we post placards with these maps at all the major trail intersections, so that when people are out there, they can look at it and it says, you are here, so they know how to get back home. But I applaud Matt. I also have just acquired ArcGIS, so I look forward to working with Matt, collaborating on this, so.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was also curious whether or not the Lunenburg Town Stewards program is still in effect. I think it was in 2011, per the minutes that it was started, but I don't think anything came of it. And I think it would be an excellent opportunity to reenact such a program in order to get individuals out there, as well as get people a sense of
I believe the closest thing we have to a trail steward right now is myself.
Okay.
And you do a fine job, Bob.
I also do have some, there's a couple of high school students as part of their class project for their graduation is actually, I got them some handheld GPS units, and they're out doing the other side of town.
Excellent.
By the Pleasant Street area as part of their mapping.
So perhaps like under a trail steward program or something, get like Lunenburg snow riders and other interested parties together, so people are working more efficiently to get this done quicker. I think that I was looking at the maps on the Conservation Commission page for the Lane property, and I believe the map that's on there was actually just proposed trails when we acquired the property back in 2015.
That map was made by Brandon as part of the original plan for the Lane property, and it purported to it all fairly accurately shows existing trails. There are no proposed trails on there. It has a couple of small errors, but it does need to be updated because it does have some errors, and so.
Could you speak a little to that program, because I'm not familiar with it?
Oh, I don't know anything about it. I just saw it was in the Lunenburg Town Conservation Commission minutes from 2011. That they had.
If you look in the Lane property plan, it speaks. There's a little paragraph in there that speaks to the establishment of a trail steward program.
And that was actually the former commission that started that.
Yeah.
Because I think having some coordination, it's great to see this activity because it's really badly needed. I can go on your list of people who got lost on the Lane property. But having it coordinated, is pretty important, so it's...
And I think, getting the base maps done, is the first step. And then, we've been talking about trails on the small town forest and things like that. So as soon as we get the base done, then we'll put a trail in, we can GPS, we can add those maps.
I'm still after JJ Cody downloaded the 2-foot LiDAR contours. Brandon tells me that, you can take, there's LiDAR, I forget what it stands for, but it's some kind of hotsy-totsy radar and light combination thing that it allows you to do 2-foot contours. And it's available for the entire state, but it has to be downloaded, and then after it's downloaded, it has to be processed somehow. And Brandon Kibbe told me that, the stuff that Jay did was superior, and he urged me to reach out to him, see, if we couldn't get him to do the entire town, because to me, that would make a great base map, for all of our conservation properties, if we had the 2-foot LiDAR, and then we could overlay on it, the streams and the trails and the bridges and all that good stuff.
There's a land mass. Does it penetrate water? LiDAR?
No.
Cool.
And while I'm here anyways, if you guys are still continuing the Walks in the Woods program, I'd love to lead an interpretive walk at some point.
Actually, why don't you come see me next week?
Okay.
What time are you normally out of work?
4, 5?
All right, well, Tuesday and Thursday I work till 6.
Okay, fantastic.
So come and see me one of those days. And just shoot me an email that you're gonna come down that afternoon.
Very well, yeah, I will.
All right, and then we can, because I was gonna start scheduling the walks in the woods and go on the website and send a copy to the commission, so maybe we can do that together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I think that's a great idea about mapping the trails, and I'll accept the motion in support of Matt and his efforts to help the commission map the trails, and we'll offer any support we can, and you know, trail markers and stuff like that. We have some wonderful funds that have come, so I think we can help out in that regard as well.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Hold on. Public comment?
We probably do this anyway, but there's to try to define what's a motorized vehicle trail under conservation and what's a foot trail, so that people would know the difference. It would definitely be a good idea to try to get this involved.
And
I entirely,
the,
what the best you
the snow riders have, every year they come in and they get renewed, and they have multi-use trails defined on all the lands. And basically that's it. You know, usually there's typically one multi-use trail through each property, and that's it. And there's no ATV involved except for trail work, so.
I do think that's where getting like everyone together in a single group, because the Lunenburg snow riders have done so much work in town. They really need to be included.
Absolutely. They basically do most of the maintenance work on all of our properties in town now, so.
All right.
And we're deeply indebted to them.
Good to see all of you.
So when the vote was all in favor? Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Awesome, thank you.
Is there a discussion on adjunct members?
No.
Especially not non-residents.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
Gotta wait clean on that one.
Mark Birch, 20 Buckwood Place.
Here to talk about beach erosion.
Here to talk about beach erosion. I am here on behalf of Emerald Place, and
It seems he's here more.
the engineer unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, but we've had some discussions on the beach, and I'm here to kind of give you an update.
All right.
Last year, the property owner was approached. I believe they have some sort of either an order of conditions or something, things that they needed to do to bring the site to completion. I worked together with the engineer, who worked with the property owner and members of the conservation to devise some sort of a mitigation of the beach erosion that was happening. So a couple of the things identified was to reduce the amount of piling of snow in that area, and we've done that. We installed a stone drainage trench around the perimeter to capture the majority of the water and reduce the velocity in which it goes towards the lake. I've been in contact with Anthony Cleaves at Whitman and Bingham, and there are still a couple touch-up items, but we feel that we have significantly reduced the amount of erosion. Unfortunately, due to the type of material, once it gets saturated, I took one day and I drove around and I looked at a lot of other beaches in town, and every beach had some sort of erosion. It's something that happens. Emerald Place has always responded to the town when they've had any concerns about the properties. I don't see them slowing or stopping any of that. We're still continued there as their contractor for maintenance. We still have plans to continually maintain the beach. And part of that is when we groom the beach, we continually try to move material back up. So.
Can you briefly educate the commission on what your typical grooming procedure is for the beach?
So I have a track bobcat with a soil conditioner. We turn the existing sand over and I try to bring it back up from the water's edge. You'll tend to get a little bit of a ripple in the sand right at the water's edge where the water continually beats on it. As the water recedes, I take that ripple and I continue to push it up the beach. There's a couple touch-up issues that we've talked about, myself and Anthony, that we'd like to work where there's still some erosion. If anybody's done a site visit down there, you can still see some areas. And we feel that the outlet on the south side, if that was brought down into more of a bowl so the water traveled that way out, then that would reduce that.
Is that, just so I know, is that the stone trench?
Leominster side, yes.
The stone
yeah.
trench?
Yeah, what it is that's almost higher, so the water floats out of that. We want to actually
regrade slightly.
Regrade that and bring that down so that the water that hits there doesn't spill out, because it's spilling out and taking a little bit of the beach there, so.
Yeah, I mean, I assume nothing's changed in the last 4 weeks, right?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, I
So-
mean, we've
because
had-
that trench, to me, and we have some pictures somewhere, that trench isn't really functioning. Fairly high up, the water crosses the trench and then runs along the side and just...
It runs on the inside
Yeah,
of the trench.
the stone,
It's not
the
in the
stone
trench.
depth there is actually deeper, and it does kind of come up, but the stone depth there where for the water to travel, well, yeah, it's,
I mean, you got
that
a
is-
trench down the side of the trench.
yeah.
It's an erosion
Right, and
trench down
that's
the
the
side.
idea, is we need to actually remove the trench and cup it out so it catches the water.
I think, I think there's nothing stopping it, because I say, it was pretty clear that from the parking area there, it just goes right across the trench. You know, it doesn't really go into it. It goes across and then runs down the edge of it. So it's almost like it needs more containment than that. There needs to be some more, maybe a raise or a...
I think if they modify the grade to so there's no lip there, I think that would help.
Something, because I don't think it's just making the trench deeper, because it's just going to keep
If
going
what we
over.
do doesn't work, we're gonna do more. But the idea is, we've been working together, and I've been working with Anthony to come up with solutions for the remaining concerns.
Yeah, and I thought that's what was going to be brought to the commission, was sort of a plan of what that solution was, so we could see it instead of seeing a year from now if it worked.
The engineer didn't come with him.
Yeah, the engineer didn't come with me. We've kind of discussed it, and, you know, I defer to him because he's done more of this work, and I think that we've significantly changed the amount of runoff, so I think it's just a matter of a couple more modifications.
So are we going to see those, though?
We'll reduce that.
So will we see those? I understand the engineer isn't here, but are we going to see a modification plan?
We weren't changing, we're gonna change elevation, we're not gonna really change the layout. So I didn't feel that the need to really go to the level of a full-fledged plan. Everything's still gonna pretty much remain, except what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the grade a little bit to capture that water.
When you say grade, what do you mean
Personally,
by grade?
I think if you're going to slightly change the grades, even if you redline an existing sketch and say, you know, in this area, you know, you cloud around and say, we're going to drop this down from, you know, elevation 20 to elevation 19 along here, or something like that, that would be
Plus, you know, you can mark where the trenches went, where the rock swale went, where the grass was put in, and that way we can have an updated plan for our
I
files.
think that's part of, I think the engineer has to do an as-built, don't they, at the end? Doesn't have to be some sort of plan submitted? Okay. So,
But we're talking about getting something marked
that's
up
right.
before you
So
do
do
it.
we need to come back, or can I just submit something of that nature to Matt?
Come back.
I'd like...
I've had my hand up here for a while, Jack.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
I'm sorry, I was short there. I happened to be there when they were putting that trench in. It is pretty deep. You know, and it is filled with riprap the whole way down. I also was the one that went down and took the pictures that Carl was referring to, and I looked at it. And I would just remind you that that happened after we had some record rain. I do think you could do, so I don't think any major re-engineering needs to be done. I do think it might be possible to take some of that water that comes off of the parking lot and try and keep it at the edge of the parking lot so it doesn't run out over on, onto the beach. And I urge you to look at that with the engineer to see, could you keep some of the water, because that parking lot's pretty impervious. And
We tried to bank it a little bit so that some of the water does run around.
Or even if you took and graded the sand on the beach so that the sand was higher on the other side of the riprap, so that would help contain it in the, so it didn't run across the sand. I think that could address the whole issue, just a little sand grading and...
That will, when we continually do it through the summer, it pretty much, you don't notice any issues with it. And we've happened to be in an area where we must have had 400-year storms in the last 2 years, where we have significant amount of rainfall in a short period of time that we're not used to having.
Yeah, and that was my point, that it was, there's, I once heard that something like 95% of the erosion occurs, in 5% of the time, during really, heavy storms, and I think that's what we got going on here, and I don't think we should get all carried away, and it's just sand that they can take back, with the York rake. I don't think we need to get all worked up about it. That's my general approach.
The raking was what we had approved on the town beach too.
Personally, I tend to agree with you, Bob. It's a sand beach. It's been a sand beach for a long time. If what you say sounds like you've put some thought into it, and the engineers put some thought into what you're going to do to remediate the situation. So I personally would be open to having you do that and just capture that on an as-built plan with, okay, here's the modifications we made to our original design based on the erosion that we saw in year one or whatnot. I don't know how the other members feel, Jack.
Mr. Chairman, there's really, in my mind, two pieces to this. One of them was the erosion off the parking lot and such, and I think there's good progress on that. But what I've noticed is when we have a significant rain event, because of the actual size of the beach, the water, after a few feet, naturally goes towards each other, and we always end up with some sort of cutting of that, and it always gets in. And so the solution could be, well, you can regrade it, but it's still gonna, with that size of beach. What would happen is if you threw another grass strip and ate half of that up the grass strip, there's still plenty of sand there. And you would have a less of a run, and you would take the velocity out of the water because it's running through the grass. And it's a big beach. That is a big beach. I don't know how you're going to get around it, just with a significant rain event. And by the way, you're right in terms of your observations. It's significant rain events, according to NOAA, have increased like 76% over the last 10 years. Remember that part? So we're only going to see more of that. So is it realistic to expect that something as large as that won't suffer those kinds of problems every time it does?
I don't think the size of the beach has anything to do with it. If you take and you look at where the erosion is, all the erosion occurs right along the edge that's right up along, what's the name of that, Lakeshore Drive or whatever, what's the name of that road there?
Lakefront Ave.
Lakefront Ave, thank you, Mr. Fireman. Lakefront Ave, it all happens right up against that edge of the beach. If you could take and you look out on the main beach, it was flat as a pancake. There was no erosion out in the main beach. It's all...
I disagree with that, Bob.
You disagree with that?
There were some channels in the center of the beach as well.
And I agree, but the size of the beach, I don't believe has anything to do with it. It's the material of the beach. Because
I actually agree with that, too.
Mr. Chairman, because I made, and I don't know if it was a major event or not, but I made observations that we are getting channeling all down the beach.
Right.
But where I see it coming from, when I was there on a very wet day, is not so much the size of the beach and what's falling on the beach, because it's hard for me to picture that that's a problem. Where it's coming from is the trench along the wall is not sufficiently containing the water. That trench was bubbling out water all along the wall, and it was creating erosions down the whole beach. So I think there's a problem that we don't have sufficient drainage at that wall. That's what that stone path is supposed to take care of, and it wasn't. It was just bubbling right out of it, and then right from there, not, halfway down the beach, but right from there, creating little channels, which eventually got to be bigger channels. So I think that they need to look at that design of that system, because maybe the calculations didn't account for all the impervious surface that they put on the other side of that wall, because it's just coming out. That whole grass area, further, between the buildings and the parking, that whole grass area is really wet. It's not, water's not going in there, it's coming off that grass area, it's bubbling up out of that stone trench, so we are getting erosion down the beach.
One thing we have to keep in mind this time of year, though, Carl, is when we get freeze and thaw, what can happen is we can have frozen ground below thawed ground. So then what happens is you get a saturated upper, 6 inches or so, which can cause that condition you have, but it's no fault of the ground, because the ground's frozen underneath and water can't penetrate beyond that.
Yeah, I don't think we can blame the ground, but I think we can take a hard look at the design. I think if you properly design a drainage system, it should be able to deal with frozen ground. So I think there is erosion all along the beach. It's not major like at that end by any means, but it is there, and it's getting down into the lake. And I think the source is that it's not, the design isn't handling the water that comes off of it.
So your recommendation is that we have a thoughtful review and possible redesign of the beach to better control the flow of water?
Right, yeah. Okay. The design. The other thing, just a question, because we have talked about pulling the sand out of the beach, out of the lake. So are you actually, what I thought I heard you describe was more going down the edge of the water and pulling it back from the edge. Do you actually, how far into the lake do you get?
Don't go in the lake at all.
Okay, so that's where the sand is that we're trying to pull back, though. That's the whole point.
As the water line recedes throughout the summer, I get closer to the water's edge where it was, because as the water drops, then I'm able to take some more of that sand and bring it up.
But we're not getting anything that's gone into the lake back out really appreciably, other than, I don't know how much Whalen varies.
It doesn't. You're not, Right. You're not gonna. I mean, I think that...
So the theory, though, of the theory that we can keep dumping sand on the town beach and it's okay because we pull it out isn't true.
I'm not an engineer, so I can't really go...
But we're not pulling it back out, and it's certainly...
Well, you're pushing it back up the beach. I mean, that obviously...
Only what's still on the land. What gets into the lake isn't coming back out.
No.
Right. Okay, I just want to clarify that, because there has been discussions before about us pulling out of the lake.
I can do some of that. We are allowed, I believe, at Hickory Hills, I think you're allowed to...
Yeah, because you reach out with it, and you've done a lot of beautiful work in terms of restoring those beaches and taking the muck that's moved in.
Yeah.
And I think...
When the Woodlands was here last year for their RDA, one of the things that was in that RDA was that on an annual basis, we would make efforts to pull the sand that went down into the water, back up onto the beach before we came back to the commission, and we are planning to do that.
Because I thought we were getting that on the town beach, and we never talked about it on Emerald Place, but I know on the town beach we talked about that, and I had the impression that that's what we talked about, was pulling it out, but it sounds like we're not.
Well,
it's an approval.
Or somebody else besides Mark for it, but I think you're the guy.
I don't think so, he's the man.
No, all right, well, I think in this case, I'd be open to allowing them to go and pull sand back from within the water.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. That's...
I think that's a common sense approach that, you do it carefully to add experience in other areas of the town, and why not?
It would feel better about putting more sand on if we know we're not just filling up the lake.
So where are we on the existing drainage? I feel that, there are some, in working with the engineer, we haven't met on the site, we've had some conversations,
This is the first winter since the redesign?
Yeah, and it's an incredible difference from last spring.
Personally, I think we go with their planned beach maintenance and slight modification based on the engineer's judgment, and then let's see where we are next year.
I support that approach.
Yeah, I could, but I thought we were going to get some drawing markup of what.
So
plan
the
is.
engineer's going to apply his
Yeah, okay.
judgment, whatever modifications he makes, he will redline the plan and say, we slightly modified this area, and then we see where we stand next year.
But I would like to see a hearing between now and then. I want to see what they're proposing, and I'm going to pull out my pictures and say...
I'd prefer to say, this is what we did, to come back and submit what we did, and then we can put them on the
Will
agenda.
they make the modifications this spring, or...
Yeah, we've talked about, we need to do a site visit and figure out, you know, where the areas are that we can focus on and what we can do to further improve what we've already done.
Okay.
So my understanding is we'll get these modifications, they'll proceed to go do it.
And then they'll submit the modifications for our information.
For our information. Submit before the work is done?
I think they can do it after the work's done.
And then we see how it works out, and if we don't like how it's worked out a year from now, we tell them.
Or 3 months from now.
Or 3 months from now, or whatever.
Right.
If we see, okay, this is what you did, now we're right back where we started, now we have something to back up that, hey, what you did didn't work.
Sounds good.
Okay. All in favor of that approach?
Aye.
Why don't we put a motion that Mark will proceed with beach maintenance in consultation with the engineer at the Emerald Place Beach to restore it and make minor modifications as needed to reduce the erosion observed this season.
And record those on the,
Submit red line plans.
on the submitted red line, right, yeah, what you said.
Work for me.
That's your motion?
It is my motion.
Motion, second, and then a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mark.
Did anybody here, I know we just heard something, but did anybody
Yeah.
hear
Is
that?
there a dog
around here or something?
Is he watching like animal videos?
An animal, it's not a bird, I didn't think, it was an animal.
Well, I'm gonna get out of here.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Take it with you, Mark.
See you later.
Good night, Mark.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right, what do we have left there, Matt?
We have a few things. You guys know about the proposed warrant article. The draft, it's actually on the cloud, if you guys want to look on the cloud. I threw up the email on the cloud. Heather has an article that she's drafted that would read, see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey property located at 161 Gilchrist Street, shown on Assessor's Map 031, parcel 0010, from the Board of Selectmen for general purposes to the Board of Selectmen for the purposes of conveyance, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to transfer the property situated thereon and take any legal action necessary to effectuate the transfer of said property situated thereon in exchange for a portion of property located at 171 Gilchrist Street, shown on Assessors Map 031, parcel 011, for the purposes of conservation land or take any action relative thereto. The article would be due in tomorrow, and she wanted to know, the Board of Selectmen actually wants to know if we would sponsor the article.
I move the Conservation Commission sponsor the article written as it appears in the cloud, is drafted by the town manager.
Town manager, yeah.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, is there something that shows what this land is?
Yeah, it's right in front of you.
Right in front of you.
So can you explain what we're giving up and what we're getting?
We don't know that yet.
We don't.
You can't.
I don't think that is, I don't think there's been some ideas, I think, tossed around.
When will that?
No, you go ahead, Ken, first.
So this land, we talked about this land at meetings previous. This is privately owned land that, there's a PNS on, I believe, so there's two pieces of land, and there's a 20-foot strip that runs down the middle that the town owns, that's shown on this little map. the idea is that the person that has a PNS, I think, wants that 20-foot strip.
Right.
And is willing to trade some piece of land at the back of that large parcel to us that would give us access to the Lane property.
Okay.
The driveway that's down from that property, this one here, is Oliva's driveway, which we have, I believe we have a deeded.
We have an easement. We have an easement to town.
So,
Right of way.
you know, over that right-of-way easement, you know, to the back of that property, you know, some sort of strip would give us more meaningful access to the Lane property.
There's an existing trail that goes from the back of the Oliva, it leaves the Oliva driveway just before the bridge, just before Mulpus Brook, and goes across the back of the Sozik piece here, just short of, you can see that, this green blob here, that's wetlands. Okay, just short of the wetlands, and comes in right about here. Okay, an existing trail, and maybe 200 feet farther into, and now you're on the Lane property. And maybe 200 feet farther into the Lane property, you come to the road that goes down to the Peter Charpentier Bridge across Mulpus Brook. He's not going to be able, the developer here won't be able to take and do anything with this land back here, because it's all behind this wetlands.
Wetland, right.
It's all behind the wetlands. And, you know, so I'm in favor of the swap, so long as we get the entire trail, the entire existing trail. Either that, or we'd have to take and go back there and walk it and figure out, you know, where could we relocate that trail, you know, if the developer wasn't amenable, you know, to like giving us everything behind the wetlands. You know, where can we relocate that trail so we still would have meaningful access? Because everyone who lives over here doesn't go all the way around to Holman to get into here.
Right.
You know, right now, we all go down Oliva's driveway, you know, and walk over the back of the Sozik property, and the Sozik doesn't agree. But we have no agreement from Sozik or anything, you know, it's just he's not objecting. But if he were to object, then I would be advocating that the commission put a road down that 20-foot strip, which would bring you just almost exactly into the Charpentier Bridge, so we would have meaningful access directly over the road. You know, to me, we want one or the other.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good trade. You know, you could argue against it because, you know, you're potentially making it possible for him to maybe get another house lot or so out of there than if we didn't trade it. But I think it's a good thing for the town of Lunenburg.
Yeah, my question isn't so much being against the article, because the article, since there are no plans, is a placeholder in my mind.
It is.
So I can't be against something that isn't defined, but I also can't be for something that isn't defined. So when will we define, and what's the process for what the trade would be, and exactly what land, and all the issues you talk about?
There needs to be some negotiations, and I don't think they've been had yet.
Well, that's the whole point, of the article, is to allow the town to enter into negotiation to figure out what it's gonna get in return for its trade. That's the whole point of the article.
I think we need to have
So the article,
questions answered before the town meeting, though, because to get up and
Exactly.
like you said, to
Yeah, right.
support or not support it, you know, we owe it to the townspeople to say, you know, we agree with this, this is a good trade, we know what we're getting.
right.
So I think that the article is vague, and it's purposely vague as a placeholder.
Right.
To me, that gives us, you know, between the time from now until the annual town meeting to figure this out.
Okay. All right, yeah, I just, because...
I wouldn't go to the town meeting and say, oh, you know, we don't really know
Trust
what
us.
we're gonna get. I mean, that would be my
We'd look like fools if we did that, you know, I mean, and we're not, you know, we want to do, but this allows us to take and entertain the possibility that this can all be pulled off and, you know, with the i's dotted and the t's crossed before town meeting.
And I think that, you know, I would be in favor of rushing this. I mean, the way it stands right now is, you know, if this doesn't happen, it doesn't benefit us. It's really just stays the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and if all of a sudden, like, if Mr. Sozik was put up a no trespassing sign on the trail, well, then, well, we're gonna be going down this 20-foot strip,
Right.
to access it, instead of going down, Lever Gallagher's driveway.
Well, I think that's probably the reason why he just always let us go by there, was to avoid using that strip.
I mean, the only one that really it benefits to do this is the developer,
Right.
who has the PNS on the property.
So now that I understand the process, that got to be negotiated, remind me what the article is. Is the article
Can you reread it, Matt?
giving the Board of Selectmen the...
It's giving the Board of Selectmen the authority to negotiate on the town's behalf. Let me pull it back up. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey the property located at 161 Gilchrist Street, shown on Assessor's map, and it outlines that, then that's this 20-foot strip, from the Board of Selectmen for general purposes, to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of conveyance, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to transfer the property situated thereon and take any legal action necessary to effectuate the transfer of said property situated thereon in exchange for a portion of property located at 171 Gilchrist Street, shown on Assessor's Map 31, Parcel 11, for the purpose of conservation land, or take any action relative thereto.
Okay, so...
I made the motion. I don't know if it was seconded, but I'd like to amend it. I think it should say something about to provide access to the Lane property. To me, that's the only reason we would do this, is to provide access to the Lane property, because we have access now through the 20-foot strip.
But Bob, where it says, in exchange for a portion of property located at 171 Gilchrist Street, shown on the assessor's map, for the purpose of access to the adjacent Lane property conservation land, or take any action relative thereto?
Exactly.
Okay.
Can
I think that's an improvement for sure.
Yeah.
But since we're in conversation, before we start modifying,
Can we modify her paragraph there and send her just that slight
can we
modification?
continue
Hold on one
discussion
second.
before we decide what?
Sure, absolutely.
Because I'd just like to beat that horse a little bit more, and it's not that I don't trust the Board of Selectmen, but there's nothing in here that says the Conservation Commission has much of a say in this process.
No, I agree. It doesn't say who's going to do the negotiating, whether the town...
Well, it does.
Actually, it does. It says the Board of Selectmen's going to do the negotiation.
Right, the Conservation Commission doesn't have the authority to negotiate the land swap.
Exactly.
The Board of Selectmen does.
That's
why.
But the negotiation, it's participation, it's somehow to make sure...
In concert with.
In concert with, there's something...
I agree with you, Carl. I think you have make an excellent point, because I would hate to see us end up with a meaningless piece of land across the back here that doesn't provide, that you really can't walk across, because if it's too close to the brook, it's steep, it's a tangle of brush. Really, I'd like to see us preserve the existing trail back there, because it is all behind the wetlands.
Right.
We wouldn't have to disrupt anything, but I don't know if that's achievable.
Crazy idea.
The negotiation.
Crazy idea, though, because it sounds like the article is to transfer the land from the Board of Selectmen from one purpose to the Board of Selectmen for another purpose. Isn't it possible so the conservation doesn't own that land, the town does. Is it possible to transfer that land to the conservation and then we negotiate the deal?
Even if we had stewardship over the land, the Board of Selectmen is the only authoritative body that can do a land negotiation in any community.
Okay. Just ask the question.
Now, I understand your point. That's just
How do
the
we make
reality.
sure that we get say in the agreement?
Just say in concert with, inject the
In
in concert
concert
with.
We can't interject ourselves as a negotiating party because we don't have any legal authority.
I agree with Matt, but I also agree with Carl that...
No, I understand Carl's point, too.
We'd like to be consulted, about...
Maybe maybe it can't be in the motion, but going forward, we need to make that known with the town manager and the Board of Selectmen. This is managed by us, we need to be involved in the process.
It only takes one element, the selectmen, to make the decision, right? There's nothing to stop from adding, and that's the core element, nothing to stop us from adding something like in concert with.
Jack, you can't do it.
But we're not
You can't do that.
negotiating, we're asking to working in concert with us.
We can't, again, I'm going to say it, we have no legal authority to negotiate, only the Board of Selectmen does. We cannot interject ourselves either in any article or any way as an authoritative body in a negotiation. They can ask our opinion as far as what we think of what they're negotiating and work with us on it, but to formally interject ourselves into the article to be a negotiating party is illegal.
I mean, I think an important first step to this is to take and, go into ArcGIS and show the location of the existing trails on here, relative to the wetland, because that's what the developer's going to be interested in, where are the wetlands? And, relative to, like where is the Peter Charpentier Bridge and all that and other stuff. Just so, because then if we could put the trail on here, then you could see exactly, what are we talking about? What is it we're after here? And if you can put the 2-foot contours on here, so you can see, like where is the land steep, where is it flat enough to support a trail, that kind of thing.
So that still leaves us where our only remedy is, one, to provide a sketch where we think a land swap would be reasonable, the land that we think should be swapped if it is going to be, and then to clarify the warrant language for the purpose of the negotiation in the first place. All it says is the purpose is to transfer land. It doesn't say, hey, we're going to transfer, this little 10,000 square foot piece here that is, attached to nothing.
Well, and that's why I'm saying I'd like to modify it so it says it provides, and I don't know if we want to use the word meaningful access, to the lane property. Because that certainly was the phrase that was used when we acquired the lane property, is the lane property was going to give us meaningful access to the
meaningful public access to
meaningful public access to the large town forest.
Okay.
So, is this our article or the selectmen's article? What?
Well, my understanding is we're being asked to sponsor it.
To sponsor it, to support it?
To support it.
To support it, okay.
To support it.
So we
I think
could,
it's the developer's article. I mean, he's the one he's the only one that this really benefits. I mean, the way it is right, I mean, if we do it, it will benefit us,
Yeah.
I guess.
could we be that clear, to say to the benefit of the conservation?
I don't think it just benefits the developer, because, I mean, Mr. Souza could go out there any day and put up a no trespassing sign, and all of a sudden we have no access. And this...
Other than the 20 feet.
Other than the 20 feet.
Which is undeveloped right now.
And the 20 feet is undeveloped, it's right next to a stone wall. As soon as you get past the yard, there's a huge dip that you have to cross. And then when you get all the way to the back, you can see here it crosses the wetlands.
Right.
That's wet. There is and it gets about...
really wet.
It gets about a foot deep in the springtime. And there is a place there where, I think you said it was Eddie's father, went out there and put stones after stone after stone and made like a causeway of stones that the water just flows through. But that causeway of stones is not in the 20-foot strip. It's just this side, it's in the smaller parcel side.
Right.
So we'd have to develop some other way to get across
not a
that.
good thing.
And then when you get there, then you come over here, then you're climbing an esker. Okay, there's a fairly steep esker, so you had to climb an esker. So this 20-foot strip, while it is illegal, it's not the greatest way to get in.
Right. No, it's
the
a better
best way
solution.
to get in there is to go down and leave his driveway and over the existing thing, which is wide enough to drive a Jeep down.
Right. So could we, so I think adding some language to the benefit of access, or, something like that, that makes the intention clear to the selectmen. But we could also, with that wording, we could communicate to the selectmen that, outside of the article, that we would support the article worded like this, based on the Conservation Commission having some participation in the negotiation.
You can't do that. Again, this
With
is
the
the third time.
selectmen, not with the, not.
You can't.
I don't know that.
They-
I'd like to get legal opinion on that. We can talk
In
to,
the article, but you're saying just talk to the
yeah,
selectmen.
right, that we want to work with the selectmen.
Carl, don't you know one of the selectmen?
That's why I want to protect ourselves here.
I think we can trust ourselves to do the right thing.
All right, well, let me give you an example. Somebody comes in, wants to donate a piece of land for conservation purposes, no money involved. They come to us, show us the piece. We look at it, we say, this is great. Let's vote to take this, okay? We haven't negotiated. We vote to take it, it has to go to the selectmen, because they're the only ones that can approve that
Yeah, no, I'm
transfer,
not-
and they're the only ones that can
I don't dispute
negotiate.
that, Matt, but I'm sure that there is a way that we can talk to the selectmen during the negotiation.
Well, I don't think they have no intention of leaving us out of it.
I understand that, but it doesn't hurt to put with that we support it with the assumption that we will be involved in the process. There you go.
And so, but Carl, all I'm saying is we produce this map here.
Yeah.
We add the trails to it, and we come back the next meeting and we say, this is what we're after.
Right.
This is what we're after. And then we vote to take and send that to the selectmen and say, this is what we're after. And then they can do with it what they want. But we've clearly then expressed ourselves, about.
You can include that as a handout, like a town meeting, to show an example of what we're looking for as a goal.
I'm hopeful that, we'll have it'll be a lot farther along than this by the time we get to town meeting.
That's what I'm hoping too, but you know what I'm saying?
Now, Matt, to clarify, that warrant language is due tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah, the warrant's closed tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
So we want to make that slight modification to the warrant language this evening.
I do.
And then follow up next meeting with a finalization of a trail sketch.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can have these discussions about what role can we play and get some reassurances between now and town meeting.
Totally makes sense to me.
Okay.
So where? The language change that you wanted to make to the article.
So the last sentence of the article will read, is this all one sentence?
Yeah, it's
Jeez,
kinda.
wow. All right, the last portion of the only sentence on the article will read, shown on our Assessor's Map 31, Parcel 11, for the purpose of meaningful public access to the Lane property conservation land, or take any action relative thereto.
What he said.
Just give me the last part again.
For the purpose of meaningful public access to the Lane property conservation land, or to take any action relative.
Yeah, I think we should interject that in a different area, because the reason why that's put in there is because whatever is negotiated is going to be put under our control.
Right.
So the way you've got that, the way you want to reword it kind of changes that definition.
How so?
Well, okay, you put for the purposes of meaningful access to the Lane Conservation Area.
Right, so to effectuate the transfer of said property situated thereon in exchange for a portion of property located at 171 Gilchrist Street. So what you're saying is shown on the map,
In exchange for a portion of property located at 171 Gilchrist Street, let's see. Shown purposes of conservation land. How about in order to, let's see.
okay.
So, in order to just do do it like this. For a portion of the property located at 171 Gilchrist Street, shown on Assessors Map 31, Parcel 11, for the purpose of conservation land, semicolon, in order to obtain meaningful access to the Lane conservation property, semicolon, or to take any action relative thereto.
I like it.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
That's fine.
At the end of the email from Heather, it says, "I have not heard back from town council on any changes." Does this have to go to town council, the new word?
She already sent it to town council, and she'll send a new word.
Okay, just wondering.
Okay. So Bob, you've incorporated that language into your motion?
I did.
And I amend my second with the new language.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any other things that we want to talk about on the agenda here, Matt? Do you want to give your agent report? Treasurer's report, go ahead.
Did we get a copy? Everybody gets it. I've been working on this for about 3 months now, trying to investigate our funds. We've got basically 3 different funds that are under our control. They're not part of Adam's budget or the budget, that we usually tap, the office budget. There's the Timber Rights Revolving Fund. That presently has a balance of, and this is an earlier draft, I'm sorry. I think I handed out an earlier draft, but that's okay. It's still pretty active. It's got a balance of $3,163. You can see what the balance is.
31,000.
There's going to be another $2,500 put into it this week. From 31,000. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 31,000.
33, 31.
There's a limit of 10 grand, but if we want to spend more than that, all we have to do is go ask the Board of Selectmen and Town Finance. And we can ask the Board of Selectmen to increase that, because this has to be reauthorized annually. This revolving fund goes back into the general fund. And Heather already said she would be willing to, in a prior email I saw, said she'd be willing to increase that spending. Since we now have, there's actual funds in there. It didn't, 10,000 seemed like a lot of money when there was zero money in there. Now that we got $33,000 in there, it doesn't seem like quite so much. Then there's the Hollis Road revolving account, and apparently that was established by an original gift. When we got the Hollis Road account, that's what the town treasurer remembers, and so that does not have to be reauthorized annually. And we got 25.6 in there, and but that's basically to take care of the Hollis. That all has to be spent on Hollis Road. And then we have the Conservation Trust Funds, and there is a trust fund commission that's elected. It consists of 3 members. And Mike Gale is the chair. And if we want to spend any money out of that, we need to go to the trust fund commission and ask. And their general approach is for the large funds, like the Conservation Land Purchase Fund, that we can spend the earnings, but not the principal, so that this fund will continue. And he said, for the smaller funds, sometimes they allow you to spend, the principal. But that's on a case-by-case basis, and we'd have to go and make a case, at the request. So that's the summary of what the monies that we have available, and that is my treasurer's report.
Bob, this is great. This is a great document. Well done. If I look at the ending, the Conservation Trust, the principal and the end earnings, so it looks like those really are the earnings on that principal? So that money's been sitting there that long that
Yes.
the earnings are now exceed the principal?
Yes.
Wow. So it's getting stale sitting there that long. We gotta.
Geez, Carl, he said yes so much, you should have said, hey, can I have $20?
Can I have the last 3 accounts?
Well, just, the power of compound interest. My mom was a Connecticut teacher, and she had a cost of living allowance adjustment on her pension. And by the time she died, I think her pension was like 2/3 cost of living adjustment.
Wow.
1/3 pension, the original.
Wow.
It just stuck me back. Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
So which one can we buy hats with, Matt?
None of them.
Got a hat.
None of them can you buy hats with.
And a vest. Come on.
I have regular budget line items that'll cover that.
Very nice. Well done,
I bought
Bob.
this one myself.
Bob, for the conservation funds, is there any direction in terms of what those earnings can be spent on? Is it generally just for land purchase or just for?
I believe it's, well, first of all, the first, I mean, the major fund is the one that's got 54 grand in it. And clearly, based on the title, it's for conservation land purchase.
Sure.
You know, and so I don't know about those other funds.
Yeah, all the endowment documents disappeared.
And all the, yeah, so, so you have to go to the trust fund commission and ask them to make a judgment call. You know, and Mike said that they take a conservative approach, you know, which is generally we allow you to spend the earnings, but not the principal. But sometimes they make exceptions for the smaller funds, and clearly, you know, a fund with 90 bucks in it, $90 in principal, that's a smaller fund.
Sure.
So, I mean, because the biggest one of those small funds started out with a principal of 501 bucks. But you can see, the commission hasn't touched these, clearly.
Sure.
Since, you know, generally, the
Well, these funds must be very, very old.
principal by a factor of 4.
Yeah, these funds must be very, very old with those small amounts in them. It's probably considered a lot more back in the day.
Well, it wouldn't surprise you what happens, they weren't big, they made an initial thing, and these are like residuals. Yeah. And we have 3 people.
When you have a $90 principal and a $400 interest.
We nominated someone at the caucus, you were at the caucus, don't you remember we nominated someone for the trust fund commission?
You know, it never dawned on me, well, I hadn't seen this, to be able to make the connection. I said, oh, they got something, I thought, maybe the cemetery or something. But,
I missed that too.
yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, my thoughts.
So, you know, and in addition, you know, we can go to Matt and, you know, for stuff like hats or trail markers and stuff. Matt has bought those, you know, basically out of his office budget in the past. And I don't see any reason why we can't continue to do that. I like that.
I guess, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, I have something I want to bring up. It sort of relates to this. I don't know if you can wait till the end.
How long is it going to be?
It could be a little discussion, but it's not huge. But it has to do with the Hollis Road and revolving fund. money.
Sure.
Last year, with the pollinator habitat that's on Hollis Road Conservation Land, the commission authorized up to $1,500 for the purchase of plants and seeds and things like that, materials. I'd like to make that motion again and see if the commission would allow the pollinator habitat to spend up to $1,500.
So moved.
Absolutely. We have a motion on the table?
Second.
Just a brief discussion. Last year, we used it to buy some plants. You know, we've got money that was donated this year, and I purchased the materials to put some signs up. So that will be happening this spring. But I think, you know, going forward, we're going to need, you know, we may need a small shed to keep a lawnmower and things like that in. So there's going to be some ongoing expenses and additionally some more plants and things like that. So that would be.
Quick question, are you gonna wanna use the same plant mix? Because I've got that in the budget folder, what we used for a mix for the pollinator habitat.
Yeah, I don't know, that, it didn't take well, so we've got to do some other things up there. We're going to try some solarization, try to, like sterilize some of the land with some plastic, so we can kill off what's there, so we can put that seed mix or whatever in. So that might be another thing that we would buy with that money, would be some of the black plastic material.
All right, I mean, if you wind up going to another vendor other than New England Wetland Plants for the seed mix,
You never got the rain barrels?
No, I got to talk to you about that, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
if you, go to another vendor for the seed mixes other than New England, let me know, because I may have to establish a vendor account.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're a perfect vendor. I think that we would go with them, and we bought plants through them too, so I think that they're a fine vendor.
So was there a second on that motion?
There was.
There was.
We have a
So we're in
motion and a
discussion.
second.
So we're in discussion?
Correct.
So I'm not at all against it. Is it for this year's, out of this year's money,
Well,
Ken? What?
I don't really know how that works, if this is on, like, if we have to spend it, if we authorize it tonight, do we have to spend it by July, or? is
No.
this- We could spend it.
You'd have to,
Yeah, that
you'd have to
particular
commit it.
account
You'd
isn't
have to
subject
commit
to
it.
fiscal year. There's no fiscal year limitations on that.
So that was my other question, just the motion should contain, I think, the source of the funding. So what account does that fund?
Be out of Hollis Road.
Hollis Road revolving fund.
Okay,
House Road wrong.
thank you.
We have a motion, second, discussion's closed, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I'll make sure it says Hollis Road revolving fund. Carl, that was an excellent point.
Big contribution.
All right, so we have the treasurer's report, complete. Thanks, Bob. That was excellent. Matt, agent's report?
I'm just looking at the other agenda items, making sure we don't miss anything else. Well, the violations are all pretty self-explanatory, because I wrote them in the agenda. 571 Chase Road, hopefully it stops snowing and the stuff can grow in. 654 Mass Ave, the notice of intent is filed. It will be on our next agenda. They're being represented by Greg Roy. Emerald Beach, we've already done that. Reservoir Road, we did that with the lady here, but that would tie into my 155 Reservoir Road, which is that whole development. The address we have on file is that. So, because we're gonna be, Rosemary's gonna be going out and doing the survey verification, even though, you know, Whitman and Bingham hasn't finished giving Brian Marchetti his material yet, I'm having her go out there anyway, and take care of that so we can start verifying those numbers and solidify them. And now that we're gonna be doing some strategic planning with the residents in that area and pulling all the files individually, everything's gonna wind up tying in nicely. So, based on some discussion Carl and I had back and forth over on email, I'm gonna leave this on the agenda, but I think it should have its own individual category. We have new business and old business. I'd like to add a category called continuing business and put that in continuing business, if that's okay with you guys.
Yep.
Okay. 842 Rear Chase Road, I'm still waiting on Mr. Popham. He started his work, and then, of course, he got snowed in. The snow's basically screwed up a lot of people, surveyors, engineers, wetlands people. By the way, speaking of wetlands people, Mary Ann DePinto did flag that property on the land swap over on Gilchrist, the Sozik. She did flag it. And she also marked the high water mark of the Mulpus Brook. So that's all tagged. She did that before that last snow set in. So the flag should still be okay because they're relatively new. The report is actually on the cloud in this meeting folder. So any of you guys want to review it, her report and her sketches of both are in there.
But this she pulled straight off of the...
70 Oak Ridge, that should really, the landscaping and all that should start moving once the snow melts. They've been working on the house, it's been kind of a snail's pace, is my opinion of it anyway. 183 Hemlock, I'm not sure if I sent you guys pictures of the last inspection I did a few weeks ago. He had the wall out, and he had the trench dug basically, you know, he had pulled his land back, and he has it covered up with tarps, and it's basically because of the weather stood still. 811 Chase Road has been totally inactive at this point. I'm gonna be monitoring that for activity in the spring. I do know that I was approached from the developer that now owns it, about maybe putting in a third lot, which I've totally dashed his hopes on that one. 101 Pleasant Street, we all know is up for auction next week. The 7276 Mass Ave.
Where are we with the legal,
It's up for
though?
auction. It's bank?
Let's just say I signed some documents and the updated documents, and they're going to be filed.
Okay.
Friday.
101 Pleasant Street's gonna be auctioned?
Yep.
Did not know that.
It does not relieve the current landowner of his obligations to pay.
It's just interesting.
And we're working with town council to pursue that. The 7276 Mass Ave is the same person that owns it under a different entity, known as Mass Ave Land Development. Interesting thing though, and I gotta talk to town council about this. When I looked up the deeds, I noticed the mortgages on there, and it's like a cyclical mortgage, kind of like a circular, I don't know what's going on with that, but my impression of it is that Greener Living, which is 101 Pleasant Street,
Right.
and Mass Ave Development, who are both owned by the same gentleman, Greener Living has some financing with the Mass Ave entity.
Right.
So that may actually tie them in on the no permits issue. I gotta make sure that that's all ducks in a row on that one.
Matt, just, because I get confused, sometimes we run into things and we say that the conditions or the violations or whatever stay with the property, and in this case, it sounds like we're saying it goes with the...
This is the fines.
Owner.
The fines go with the owner.
Fines go with the owner.
The order of conditions, whoever buys that property is on the hook
For the order of conditions.
to do that order of conditions.
Thank you.
So it's a total buyer beware scenario on that one.
Right. So
Whoever takes over that property is now gonna be subject to our enforcement on that order. They're gonna have to carry it
So
out.
who covers the bond that we've asked to have placed?
The new owner would have to cover the
So he would
renewal
have
of the
to
bond. He or she,
Would
yeah.
have to retire, would be retiring it, and the new owner would have to pick it up.
Yeah, in other words, we have a bond that's in effect until October.
Right. Now, is that in the recorded deed? Is that recorded anywhere such that the new potential owner would spot that?
The order of conditions and all those conditions regarding the bond is recorded on the deed. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
That'll slow it down.
It's going to be interesting, to say the least.
And so, when we issued those fines, did those fines go to an individual? Did they go to a corporation?
They went to Danny Gardner Doing Business as Greener Living Luxury Homes.
Okay.
He's on the hook for them. All I can say without violating confidentiality rules or the necessity of going into executive session is that legal department is working on it.
Okay. Because the same person could be involved in other entities.
And that's why I'm examining the financing that's recorded, because the entities seem to be intertwined.
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Specific to Wildwood.
Is that it, Matt?
That's it.
All right. Next meeting, April 4th, the Ritter Land Use Building at 7 PM. Any final comments from the commission?
I'd like us at our next meeting to talk about, improvements at the small town forest, the parking lot, gate, clearing, the trails.
Great.
And perhaps ask, the commission, our staff to do some, advanced work on that. Find out, because when we asked, in the same chain of emails, Rich had me ask Heather about your procurement processes, and she said anything that was permanent needed to go through Public Works. And so I don't know if that means if we're gonna put up a gate that's permanent, that has to be done by Public Works. If we're gonna put up a parking lot, that doesn't have to be executed by Public Works. And if so, maybe we should be asking someone from Public Works to attend the meeting so we can discuss that with them.
Sorry.
On TV, come on.
I know our forester indicated that he'd be more than willing to put a proposal together to come up with a plan for that.
For clearing the trail. I didn't think,
Also for enhancing the trails on the property, that was my impression.
I got that impression too. I didn't think that included putting up a gate and doing the parking lot.
It may not, but if he's pulling together a plan, he might be able to pull together, at least give us a proposal for a plan for all of it. It might be worth asking.
Because I would just note, like, we have a plan that he developed for the small town forest. That plan shows the existing trails, so I'm not quite sure why at that last other meeting he said, well, I have no idea where those trails were. I mean, because he must have had the GPS, done the GPS work in order to make that map that showed the trails, so,
Weren't there some new trails cut in order to accommodate the,
but they weren't trails cut, they're logging trails.
Well, I mean, he did GPS those. In fact, he downloaded the GPS coordinates to the town.
And those are where?
Those, I've got those in a repository. I can send them to you. I sent them to Mr. Charpentier as well.
I'd like to get those. So
I would support that.
that's my additional comment, and I
Well, we should get
also
together and talk about-
would move to approve the minutes of January 6th.
Thank you, Bob.
remember all.
Yeah, I'm almost done with the February 21st ones.
I would, because those have been out, Mr. Luck looked at them, he made comments and I think we're actually
Beyond the,
the current,
So we have a motion to approve the minutes for January 6th, 2018. Do we have a second?
second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Bob. A lot of focus on that.
those are my other final closing comments.
I support getting that on the agenda, the small-town
Bob,
forest, for sure.
Will you put together a small bullet list of points that, to make our discussion a little more efficient when we talk about the small town forest at the next meeting, for Matt to include on the agenda?
Sure.
We also should get together and talk about the items you want me to research, as far as what the prices are, what the processes are.
Well, I mean, I hate to take and have us go to the next meeting and find out at the next meeting, well, in order to do this, we really have to be talking with Jack. And say, all right, and then, so now we have to see, well, when can Jack come? And it stretches it out, and, and so as a consequence, we don't get the gate in until August or something, it's like, I just like, if Jack has to come, let's...
What was the discussion? Why does Jack have to come?
Well, Heather said in her email, when we asked about, Rich had me ask Heather about procurement, or actually, he asked me to ask, Karen. But Heather is the chief procurement officer. Right. And so I asked, and Heather said, if you're gonna do anything permanent, it has to go through Public Works. That's what she said.
I'm just curious as to why that.
I can envision it because at least for the sewer, Public Works is responsible to supervise the contracts. So it would be involved. But I think the important step, which we get hung up on, and I think is premature for pulling Jack in, is defining the scope of work. That would be the first step. Then we can pull Jack in and decide the procurement process. So, and I think you kind of have it in your head, right? It's the
And
gate,
maybe
it's the
Gary can
parking
do
lot.
that for us. Maybe we should ask Gary to do that for us.
And usually that's a good way to go.
Well, that's what I wanted to get together with you, was what Carl was saying, was to go over scope of work, so I could have something firm that I could talk to
Because
Gary
to be honest
about.
with you, I didn't think of this. Rich sent it to me in an email. And said, Bob, Rich said, because what he said was, we have to get going. In the small town forest on cleaning up the trails and putting in a parking lot and putting in a gate. And so I want you to find out about the money. And that's the only reason I'm bringing this up, because he caused me to think about it. I didn't.
Do you think it makes
Our
sense?
chairman thought of it.
Do you think it makes sense to reach out to Jack and just give him a heads up that our target is the middle of April to have a scope of work for him to review for what we want completed at the small town forest? And if he goes, well, I need to be consulted in developing the scope of work, then we'll know. But if we give him a heads up, at least he has a chance to respond, and we're kind of dotting our i's and crossing our t's as we go along.
Good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Jack's pretty flexible, he's usually pretty easy to work with, so I think we should be okay.
Any other comments from the commission?
I have a request. Just, we mentioned earlier about putting the, I forget which one it was, on the cloud. Was it the one on the beach? Which thing were you going to put on the cloud, the notice of intent? I mean, the order of conditions and what we approved? Yeah, it was the beach, right? With the deck and what was... was definitely an action, Matt, you had it.
There's so many actions
You were gonna give it
tonight.
to us. It was, I think it was that beach on the corner of the Hickory Hills.
307.
307. That you were
Oh,
gonna-
yeah,
You were gonna
okay.
put that on the cloud, because we could.
Yes.
So we knew exactly what we approved.
So we have the minutes from, we
The
have the
minutes.
minutes from that meeting,
The
so
minutes
we
from
can
that meeting.
understand exactly what was said about the deck.
It was the minutes.
But can we also put what was approved on there, so we see that plan that was approved and the language that was approved?
Yeah,
All in there?
of course.
So my actual, so we already agreed to all that, I thought, but my request is, could we start a new folder on the cloud that we put things in by address? And that could be the first one, and we can just build on it.
Well, I have a folder that is geared for addresses.
Great, can we put it there, and then we can just start filling that thing up, because we just keep digging that hole, and I can't find anything, you know? Especially with all these delayed meetings, you know? It's in the one from 3 weeks ago. Thank you.
I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Because I just got,
I saw your note.
You got the old, where are you?
I just got the